Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, July 18th, 2016 City Work Session. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we will have a discussion on retail economic development within Watertown. Cody Gustinson, is that correct? From Buxton is here. I think I introduced him to most of you, but Cody, I'm going to let you just get started on this.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Thorson, for that introduction. Thank you, all council members, for allowing myself the opportunity to be here tonight to present to you the Buxton Solution for Economic Development. Go ahead and pull this up. Again, my name is Cody Gunstinson with the Buxton Company, and I'm the Director of Sales. Now, I'm here this evening to talk with you all about how a partnership with Buxton will help the City of Watertown in achieving three main goals, and that is increasing and diversifying your taxable revenue base, strengthening and retaining the existing local businesses, as well as improving the overall quality of life for both the current and future residents. Now, just to give you a little background on really who we are and where we've come from over the last 25 years, Buxton got started in this industry working directly with over 3,000 retailers for site selection services. Now, that's a combination of your local retailers that have fewer than 3 locations on the ground today, all the way up to those major retailers like FedEx, like Trader Joe's, In-N-Out Burger, Lowe's, and many, many more, helping all of these brands achieve one main goal, and that is going out and finding the next home run location. But more importantly, it's helping them to mitigate the risk of opening a poor performing location. So specifically, take an example of Trader Joe's. About 3 years ago, Trader Joe's was really only in that West Coast California market, and they'd done very well there. But they came to a point where they had fully saturated the West Coast market, so they wanted to grow their brand outside of California, from east to west and everything in between. That's what they brought Buxton on, is to take the guessing factor out of their process in terms of finding that next home run location and mitigating that risk of opening up a poor performing location. That's exactly why you see Trader Joe's in Dallas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Colorado, and everywhere in between. They have been extremely successful in utilizing our partnership. Swap gears here. About a decade ago, we got started working in the public sector. So utilizing that same information, but spun in a different approach to help over 700 communities nationwide, again, achieve those three main goals. Just to hit on a couple communities here that are somewhat similar to Watertown, we've done work for Aberdeen, Sturgis, South Dakota in terms of visitor insights and tourism, as well as retail recruitment. We've done a lot of work with the city of Watertown in the past, as well as Brookings. Williston, North Dakota, although not in the South Dakota market, but it's very similar in terms of the size of the population and the similar market that they are in. They've been a client of Buxton for a little over a year now, and they've been extremely successful in doing that exact same thing, utilizing Buxton's consumer analytics and our expertise in the retail world to go out and help them successfully recruit retailers that are going to bridge the gaps in demand in the city and drive more foot traffic for those existing businesses to capitalize on. But every community, every village is unique. Every city has their own goals and challenges that they go through, and that's exactly why I just want to take a step back and bring everybody up to speed on that Buxton's data is not just retail specific. Our data is absolutely applied across several different avenues outside of just retail. So working from the right to left here, city services, looking at libraries. We currently work with the Fort Worth, Texas library system on a who, where, value basis, and they have about 5 locations, helping that library to understand who's the best core customer there at each location, how do they differ, what are the preferences at each location per customer, and then where can they go out and find new locations to open into. Parks and Recreation. We recently worked with the city of Atlanta, Georgia, to help quantify and build an outdoor public skate park, help them quantify that they had enough current residents in that transient population who would utilize that outdoor public skate park. Transit, emergency services, and so forth. Looking at planning and insights. So with all of the development that's taking place here in Watertown currently, you're going to attract new residents. So part of that, this overall solution can be applied to taking a look at what is that new mover impact versus what does that traditional resident look like for the past 20, 30 years? What is the impact back to Watertown? What type of preferences do they prefer day in and day out? Taking a look at visitors and tourism convention. Tourism is a huge part of our solution where we're able to come in, and again, it quantifies the who, where, value. Who's that core tourist today? Where are they staying, like myself when I come in? What hotel, looking at heads and beds to increase the hotel occupancy tax. And then being able to understand and track them back to where they reside, to market to like-minded individuals to drive more foot traffic back to Watertown for the existing business owners to capitalize on. And then lastly is healthcare needs. We've partnered with over 300 healthcare organizations across the country. Again, going back to that who, where, value, supply versus demand. Where are the gaps in demand that those customers prefer different healthcare practices that aren't offered? How can we go out and recruit doctors and practices to bridge that gap? But for all intents and purposes, I'm here this evening to talk about economic and retail development. So overall, the Buxton solution to economic development, it is a two-pronged approach. First and foremost, it absolutely is retail recruitment. So coming in and being able to understand what are the strengths, but what are the weaknesses in the city? Where are the gaps in demand? And then helping you to proactively go out and recruit these brands through a data-driven story. The second prong is business retention. We are not in the business of bringing in new retail that's going to kill your existing retailers. It's about finding that healthy mix of net new retail that's going to, again, drive more foot traffic back for those existing businesses to capitalize on. We're a firm believer that a rising tide raises all boats. Now, the whole mantra behind the Buxton solution is to get you as city leaders to start thinking like a retailer. And the first step in thinking like a retailer is getting beyond the limitations of demographics. So here in this example, you have two individuals living within the same community, and that whole black fog of smoke, that's more individuals that look just like these two from a demographic standpoint. Age, income, marital status, I mean, they are identical. But when you pass this information to a retailer like Trader Joe's, Home Depot, Lowe's, any of those brands, this is useless information. It does not tell those retailers, are these two individuals going to shop in my store or are they going to dine in my restaurant? It's through consumer analytics that we can start to unveil some opportunities that definitely do exist here in Watertown. So now, by putting some consumer analytics or some psychographics behind these individuals, we can actually start to understand that while though they might live in the same neighborhood on the same block, they are extremely different. So you have Ben Shaw on the upper left, Tom King on the bottom right. Ben shops at Sam's Club. He drives a GMC and eats at Red Lobster, whereas Tom shops at Trader Joe's. He drives a Volvo and eats at Olive Garden. Ben has one child and likes to watch movies in his home on Netflix. Tom likes to take his 3 kids out to a theater. So for example, if I'm a Trader Joe's and I'm looking at this South Dakota market, which one of these 3 locations, these 3 green stars on this map, do you all want to locate at? If I'm leading in here in Watertown with demographic information, I'd probably want to be in the middle where the highest density is. But that doesn't tell these brands, are there more Tom Kings that are going to shop in my Trader Joe's location here? But again, by leading in with consumer analytics and really painting that to that retailer, each specific one, that it's not just about location, location, location. It's more about customer, customer, customer. Show me where I have enough of my potential core customers like a Trader Joe's would want, and that's where I want to be in this community. That's where I'll be successful. So now looking at a consumer analytics story, the most potential is on the bottom left, where that higher density is of Trader Joe's potential core customers. Now, we always get the question, where does our data come from? Where does that information come from? And really, at the end of the day, it comes from several different avenues. Most notably, it comes from you and I as individuals willingly leaving behind a trail of information that speaks to who we are as consumers and how we live our lives. Think of this done through things like credit card swipes, loyalty and rewards programs, buying a car, buying a Dodge over a Ford. If any of you gentlemen play fantasy sports, we willingly give up that type of consumer analytic information every single day, and Buxton is the leading aggregator in this type of information. Nobody can touch the breadth and depth of our data that we have in-house. You can see on the screen here, we source over 250 different data sets, maintain information in over 130 million households nationwide, and up to 7 individuals per household. We also have a strategic partnership with the largest credit card processor in the world. I'm sure you all could probably figure out who that is. But they allow us instant access to transactional level data, and I could literally sit back and look at every single one of your households and tell you, does the husband in that household buy Bud Light or Miller Lite? Does the wife, does she buy white wine or red wine, Huggies or Pampers? We can truly drill down to that granular level of data, And nobody else can do this because that partnership with the largest provider is proprietary to Buxton only. We own about 80% of the credit card market when it comes to consumer analytic transactions. It's almost a little scary what you can do with big data these days when you start to think about it. So once we understand what the consumer profile makeup is of Watertown around each of these developments we're looking at, as well as that drive time trade area, again, how far those residents are willing to drive in time to purchase certain goods and services, it's really through the unique marriage of these key elements that we are able to come in and create Watertown, South Dakota's unique thumbprint. And just like every city out there has a unique thumbprint, every retailer has a unique customer profile that they consider their core customer and would like to match and locate around as well. So why that's important to you all is because at the end of the day, this is where we're taking the guessing factor out of this entire process and providing you with data-driven results in terms of, first and foremost, what retailers are even looking at the market. Is Trader Joe's looking at South Dakota? Is Home Depot looking at South Dakota, or is it Lowe's? We take that guessing factor out and provide you a subset list of retailers that are not only looking to expand their brand to the South Dakota market, but more importantly, they're looking for the consumer profiles that are here today. So it's no longer sitting back and taking darts and throwing them at a concrete wall, hoping that you're going to get traction with a Home Depot or any retailer. It's about harnessing and honing in on this Buxton data and utilizing our account management team to proactively go out and not recruit just anybody, but specifically the retailers that are going to be the best fit and thrive in Watertown for the long haul. So once we have that subset list of retailers we're looking to go out and recruit, this is where we put that plan into action. So we actually kickstart this process for you with an initial engagement from Buxton to these retailers at the C-suite level, basically stating that we've gone out and done our homework here in the city of Watertown. We've partnered with a third-party unbiased market validation firm, Buxton, and we found that this location in our city has a great fit and great potential for your brand. Be expecting a call from Mayor Thorson or the contact here at the city in the near future. We also provide you all the contact information for these C-suite retailers for pursuit and follow-up after the fact. But for every single one of these brands that we find is a good fit, we're going to build out customized recruitment packages that's going to contain all kinds of market intelligence and market validation. But the reason they have to be customized, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It has to be customized to each specific brand that we're looking at. In those recruitment packages, it's going to contain, again, all kinds of market intelligence, just proving the viability of these locations for specific retailers. One of the most important pieces is this profile match report that you all see here, or a site score, if you will. Why this is important to you is because, again, we come from the retail world, so we absolutely know what over 3,000 retailers look for in their next site selections. So we formulate that information on one document, and we write it in a retailer's language. So it is a combination of your demographics on the right. It's a small piece of the pie, but absolutely an important piece. A visual representation of the proposed site in Watertown with that specific retailer's trade area around it. And then most importantly, at the bottom is we're going to line out, because I'm sure you all know retailers are not pioneers. They have to know, have we done this before in a similar setting, and were we successful in doing that? And that's exactly what we're going to line out at the bottom of this document, is showing them that, hey, Home Depot, you have done this before in a similar community to Watertown, and you were successful. Most importantly, you will be successful here. But it doesn't stop here. This is exactly where we are providing you that account management team that's comprised of about 3 to 4 individuals who are fully dedicated to your community success. They are literally there in place to do all of this legwork for you, and then that's where they want to ride shotgun with you. It is a fluid partnership. So assisting you in conference calls with Home Depot and Trader Joe's and all of these other retailers, assisting you with in-person site visits with these brands. Coming out quite often, we'll come out to the city and educate your existing business owners on what the data means to their brands and how it can help them to make better business decisions. But I'll tell you, at the end of the day, the most successful clients we have lean on Buxton to the fullest. Loop us into these calls. Have us out here in person. We want to be involved in this process because you all, as the city leaders, you are the experts in Watertown, South Dakota. We're the experts in retail. We come from that world. We speak that language. Now, because our solution here is a two-pronged approach. I want to swap gears and focus on what we bring to the table for your existing business owners to help them make better business decisions. So there's a whole suite of products that we bring to the table for those existing retailers to capitalize on. And working from left to right here, we'll see the household and workforce consumer profiles, basically helping your existing business owners understand through data who are their core customers today and what type of marketing are they most responsive to. Is it an email campaign? Is it a direct mail campaign? For those existing business owners, it's got to be about delivering the right message at the right time to the right household. Also supplying that leakage or supply and demand gap analysis, helping those existing businesses understand where the gaps in demand in the city that their brand might fall under, and then helping them to better stock their shelves and end caps with the right products, again, to cut that leakage and keep those local dollars spending locally. Consumer propensities report, or a merchandising analysis. This is powerful information that major grocers use day in and day out for shelf allocation purposes. So, for example, think of, I'm sure we've all in this room been to 2 different Walmarts in 2 different locations. Both of those Walmart stores are going to sell the same products in both locations. But what you'll start to notice is different is where the product's allocated on the shelves and the end caps. Completely different in each location because they're catering to that business's core customer in each area. We bring that same level of intelligence to your existing business owners, existing grocers, just putting them on the same level playing field in terms of information that major retailers have access to. And then demographic information on historical, current, and projected data. Absolutely powerful information that can be used in non-retail endeavors. Now, the one way that we make all of this information accessible to not only our retail clients in the private sector side, but also our public sector clients is through our proprietary software platform called Scout Touch. You could literally think of this as your window to Buxton. It is your ease of instant access for everything, all of that market intelligence that I've gone through here today. And keep in mind, upon a Buxton partnership, we actually will provide you with an iPad that is yours through the long haul. And all of this information is going to be preloaded on there. So it absolutely can be used for business retention. So for example, if you're out eating at one of the local businesses here, the local pizza shop, and you can quickly pull up that business owner's drive time trade area and highlight all of the market intelligence he needs at the touch of a button to help strengthen his brand, showing him that trade area. Who are all of my potential core customers living within that? And what type of products do they prefer day in and day out to help better stock his shelves? Scout is also utilized for retail recruitment. So for each one of those specific brands that we find is a good fit for Watertown, we're going to preload that into Scout for you and all of the market intelligence that goes with each brand. So specifically picking on Target today, there's all kinds of market intelligence that Target, Home Depot, Trader Joe's, and all of these other brands out there are going to have out of the gate before they ever even consider moving into Watertown. And we preload all of that information into Scout Touch for you, accessible anytime, anywhere, and we want to be involved in this conversation. So Target, just like all of the retailers out there, are going to want to know where are the existing locations in that market from a cannibalization standpoint. I don't want to over cannibalize or essentially take sales away from an existing Target location in the market. They're also going to want to know, what does the competitive landscape look like? What type of market share can I expect when moving into Watertown in the near future? Dominant segments are basically, where are my core customers? Because again, it's not just about locations. You could have the best piece of dirt in the world, but if it doesn't have my core customers, it's useless. So out of the gate, highlighting for that in each specific brand that they can expect to pull all of their potential core customers around this development. That match report we talked about, highlighting that retailers aren't pioneers, that they have done this before and they were successful and they will be successful doing it here. And then being able to put all of that information together in a nice pursuit package for each specific brand and email it out at the touch of a button. This is your ease of instant access for all of that market intelligence that we talked about today. So I want to wrap up by explaining the Buxton advantage compared to some of our perceived competitors out here in the market. So there's 4 key advantages I'll focus on here today. Again, starting with that retail background. That NASCAR slide that I threw up in the first 5 minutes of my presentation, that tells you for every single brand on that And all of the other 3,000 brands, we're helping them at the C-suite level lay out their growth strategy across the country. We are helping them to find new home run locations and mitigate the risk of a underperforming location. When our competitors come in and throw that NASCAR slide up, that simply tells you that they completed a real estate transaction. They simply took a listing, put it online, waited for a retailer to buy it. They worked with that brand. They are not true retailers at the core. They are brokers. Our data and approach, again, over 250 different data sets, proprietary data sets that none of our competitors can go out and get. We own about 80% of that credit card transaction market and many more different data sets that truly set us apart. And then our approach, that proactive story with the retail background behind it, truly sets us apart from our perceived competitors. Scout platform. Again, that is homegrown, built in-house. It's proprietary to Buxton only. It is your economic development tool. It is not only where we house all of that information accessible anytime, anywhere, but it also has the GIS mapping platform side built into it as well. So while we are focusing on certain locations in the city, you all have the tools and capability to go in this platform and run analysis anytime, anywhere throughout the country. And then you have our account management team to back that up and validate and walk you through that process. And lastly, and most importantly, is that ongoing support. Again, like I mentioned, that account management team comprised about 3 to 4 individuals. They are going to be there throughout that entire process. They are there in place to do all of that upfront legwork for you, and then where they ride shotgun with you. So assisting you all in the conference calls with retailers, with in-person site visits, coming out and educating the existing business owners on what the data means to their brands. Ultimately, through the Buxton partnership, we are going to help the city of Watertown achieve those 3 main goals: increase and diversify your taxable revenue base, strengthen and retain those existing local businesses, and then improve the overall quality of life for both the current and future residents. Just to give you a very quick idea of what the first 60 days would look like out of the gate of a Buxton partnership, I've lined that up here. So out of the gate, we assign that a project management team who is going to get acclimated with Watertown, South Dakota, understand the initiatives, the challenge we go through, and what's the long-term strategy moving forward. And then that's where we start to do that who, where, value. So coming out and doing all of that in-depth analytics for you, and then building out those customized recruitment packages, and then that's where we're off to the races, riding shotgun with you to assist you in that process to ensure that we are being extremely successful when going out and recruiting specific retailers. So I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here to present this evening, but I want to go ahead and open it up for any questions that you might have at this time.
Cody, you've worked with Watertown before. I mean, are we starting from scratch here is what you're proposing? Or will you build and revise what you've already done in prior studies that you've done for Watertown?
So that's a good question. How that process would work is we would utilize both, essentially. We would utilize the previous data just to get an idea of where we started, where we left off. But we would most likely come in and start fresh. So understanding, because as retailers change, consumer preferences change, residents change. So we want to understand what's taking place currently. But to answer that question, absolutely, the information that we have already provided will be baked into that process.
Cody,
Yes,
if
sir.
you're working, are you currently working with Brookings in Aberdeen?
No, sir, we are not working. They are past clients.
We wouldn't be in competition with Brookings. I mean, we are, but not in your firm, though, where you wouldn't try to decide what we could get than Brookings didn't want. Or
Correct. But to also just take that a step further, if we were working with a Brookings or Aberdeen or Sioux Falls in the future, it wouldn't be a challenge because we are a third-party unbiased market validation. All we are doing at the end of the day is coming in, providing that data-driven story, and it's up to the retailers to choose where they want to go. We are not coming in and telling a retailer, you need to go to Watertown versus Brookings. We are doing that data, providing it in such a way that they are used to seeing it, and at the end of the day, it's up to those brands to make that final decision.
When you say in the past you've worked with both Brookings and Aberdeen, can you define, I mean, where the relationship ended or?
Sure. So both of those partnerships were prior to myself coming on with this firm. Aberdeen was back in the 08-09 timeframe. Brookings was more recent. Both solutions for both communities was the overall retail recruitment and business retention solution. I can tell you, Aberdeen back in that time frame, and even Brookings a little bit, our methodology was completely different. Obviously, as years go by and time goes by, we want to evolve and update our methodologies to get better at what we do. But overall, it was helping both cities come in and understand the weaknesses in the gaps in the community, and then helping them to proactively fill those gaps through a data-driven story.
Cody, how long would you typically spend with a community our size? What is typical for you?
In terms of partnership?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And to give you an average, I couldn't really put a number to it because, again, every community's challenges and goals and initiatives are extremely different. But what I've seen, just for example, Williston, North Dakota, they partnered with us about a year and a half ago, but have already renewed for subsequent years because they're seeing that growth and that strategy actually come into play. There's communities like Brookings. We've worked with them for about a 2.5-year partnership, and then their initiatives had changed at that time frame, so they had opted to not renew. But again, on average, I would say 2 to 3 years is right around where we see clients seeing extreme success in renewing or deciding to not renew.
Cody, I have a question about the size of our town, which is, 22,000 plus people. Costco, Sam's Clubs, they're probably not going to come to Watertown. What limitations do we have by our size, and what advantages do we have? A smaller town, I think it's a different picture.
Sure. So a couple questions there. First and foremost, some of those bigger brands, Costco, like you mentioned, you're right. They might not want to come to Watertown out of the gate because your demographics might not be what they're looking for. But at the end of the day, that's why we're not leading in with demographics. We're painting a consumer-driven story. So it's not telling Costco, hey, I know you look for 100,000 population, but while we don't hit that, we have enough of your core customers living here who would spend dollars in your brand. So it's not coming in and saying a Costco wouldn't be a good fit because we don't fit their demographic needs. We would go into much more in-depth analytics there. Now, what are the strengths of Watertown is your unique market and your downtown area and some of that local regional feel and your tourism and all of these other things that you have going on, like this community center that's coming in, like the parks and recreation that are out here that are beautiful, that are driving more people to come here in the afternoons and on the weekends. So retailers understand that foot traffic is coming here, so that is a competitive advantage. There are specific retailers that would like to take advantage of not only your current residential population, but that transient population or that non-resident as well. Those pull factors that are pulling residents in, retailers want to capitalize on that, and that's part of that that data-driven story that we're going to paint to each specific brand with you.
Cody, I have a couple of quick questions, and in the first one, Buxton always uses a time drive, and that was a big struggle for us on the last time to try to get Buxton to understand that our time drive can be much further than 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, up to 60 minutes, for people to shop Watertown. And explain to me why that was such a huge problem to get over.
Sure. Great question. So drive time is what you're talking about. Market trade area, drive time trade area. That's how retailers would view your market. The reason we are looking at maybe a 10, 15, 20, 30 minute versus a 45 or a 60-minute trade area is because while you do have consumers that you're pulling from 60 minutes away, those are not your core customers. Those are not these retailers' core customers living here. It's called drive time value decay. If there's a Target located 10 miles from me and you live 20 miles away, I'm much more valuable to that Target.
I understand that. Let me just, I'm going to break in on that because, Watertown, we depend on our traffic area, about 125 or 135,000 people that shop Watertown, and they drive much further than 15, 20 minutes, but yet you guys would not go beyond that because there isn't another Target within 10 minutes. If they want to shop Target, Brookings, they come to Watertown or Sioux Falls. So I've still struggled to get past that. You got to get me past that.
Sure. That is all part of that upfront legwork that is being done. So we will come in and understand the retail market conditions, understanding that you are going to draw from more than 20, 30 minutes out. That is baked into the overall solution. Now, flip sides. Retailers, each specific retailer that we are going to look to recruit, they have their own drive time trade areas that they consider their core customers, their primary customers, their secondary customers, and their tertiary customers. So expanding that trade area, because they understand in the market that you all are in, you are drawing and pulling in from farther out. So in those recruitment packages that I mentioned, part of that recruitment package, some of the market intelligence is there, is highlighting trade areas around the locations we're looking to recruit. So take the development by Hobby Lobby, all of that vacant land right next to it. If we were looking to recruit a Trader Joe's, just say Trader Joe's for that area. Trader Joe's core trade area is about a 20 to 30 minute trade area. 15 to 20, 30 minutes right in that ballpark. But we're going to line out because, again, they understand and we understand the market that you're in. We're going to line out their 20-minute primary trade area. We're also going to line out their next secondary trade area farther out, as well as that tertiary market. So highlighting to Trader Joe's, this is what you can expect from your primary core customers living within that your specific trade area. But also know, because of the market we're in and the competition in this market, you're going to be pulling from farther out as well. And we line that out for those brands as well in that recruitment package.
Yeah, because you look at the west side of the lake, that's a 20-minute drive, and you're putting them out there almost too far out. We look at Henry and Clark as suburbs of Watertown, and I mean, these people are shopping here daily. So
Absolutely.
we need those people to understand where we're at. So let me ask you another quick question here. So when you go out and you say you're recruiting businesses for Watertown, what you're doing is you're really taking your information, you're saying that you could be a fit, you're going to write them a letter and say that somebody's going to contact you. Am I correct?
That's how it starts. Yes, sir.
And then where you go from there?
From there, we would pass you all the contact information for pursuit and follow-up, and then we would want to be included in there. So just say, for instance, if Home Depot came back and you're not able to get traction with Home Depot after several calls and emails, we would then come in and get you engaged through our contacts in our network that we have. We would somehow get you engaged through, whether that's a phone call, an email, or getting directly in touch with that retailer for you to start that communication process. Once the communication is there and we have that initial call or initial meeting, whether it's in person or on a conference call, we would want to be included in that. When I say we, I mean that account management group. They are going to ride shotgun with you, and the reason being is because we would want you to tell that story of Watertown, everything that's going on, all the beautiful developments that are taking place, but we highlight the retail side of things and help that retailer understand the data side of it. Why is this location next to Hobby Lobby a good fit for Trader Joe's? Showing them the data and helping them understand within the primary, secondary, and tertiary markets, this is who you can expect to pull day in and day out to sustain your business.
Yeah, Julie, I see you in the back there, and I know that you've worked very closely with. Can you come up and talk to us for a minute? You've worked very, very closely with Buxton, and through your dealings with the mall, and I think you might have some questions that can be posed, because frankly, I found to be Buxton extremely difficult to work with, trying to understand all the ins and outs of what we can do on the computer and with the Scout program. And maybe we had that disconnect earlier. You know, we talked about that, Cody, you and I did, that it was really through the development company that you dealt with. But Julie, I know that you worked with Buxton.
Am I on? I've had a few different situations where we have had Buxton data that we've had on file for several years. And at the mall, we were working with trying to solidify a lease when the Hallmark moved right before the mall was sold. There was a little bit of we don't really know if we want to come in with the Hallmark brand. So we did pull the Buxton data. And that did speed things up and got things going, because there was a little bit of a lag in the market for that type of thing. But we've had our challenges with Buxton too, and I think, I've been kind of a part of those meetings. That's when we've purchased Buxton for quite a while now. I know that we just had this conversation in our board meeting today, in the bid board meeting, about the Scout program. And I think, was that 2 years ago that we had Buxton in and did all of the...
It was in 2014.
Okay, in 2014. And that was something that there's a file in my office. I'm now the Convention and Visitor Bureau Director. So right before I onboarded, the development company told me that like by the 28th of December, which I didn't onboard till the 3rd of January, that we couldn't use Scout any longer, that it was expired. And so we had that data that really hadn't been utilized at all. And so I got the, the passwords and everything for it, but there just wasn't time to dig into it. And so I think that, I don't know if we bought more than we knew how to use or more than we were going to utilize. I think sometimes it's just like when you get your iPhone, you only use a certain part of it, and some of it can be, maybe we don't need all of that stuff. I also think that we have had some challenges with the picks that Buxton has done, and I know that we have approached, when I worked for the mall, we approached, the Buckle, we approached Hobby Lobby, we approached 2 or 3 of those businesses. And I know that there's a database also that I shared with the mayor that when we go to Recon, we can go through and we can see who's interested in South Dakota. We can look and see how many stores they're going to be opening within the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And as you look at that, and then they will tell you what kind of demographics they're looking for, their drive times, which that all needs to just be kind of taken into context with where we're located. And we have had, some picks that the Buckle's not going to come here. They don't want to. I mean, they've got one in Aberdeen and they've got one in Sioux Falls. They've got a few, I think Wilmer. And so that was on there as a pick, which I would have rather had maybe another option because we've already tried them. So I think sometimes the demographics fail because for some reason, there's a reason why they aren't coming here anyway. And so to switch out that pick, maybe, I think we get a lot of restaurants. There's some of that, we maybe want to look more at. We've got several restaurants. I know that there was kind of the drug stores that resided inside of the other stores. That was kind of a glitch, so that we had a lot of drugstores that came up that we needed, but we had plenty of pharmacy here, that kind of thing. So we got 10 picks, and some of them were quite unusable, I think. It looks like we get probably 2 really good picks every time we do Buxton. And then the drive time, too, and that's something that I've talked to them about personally, and they've never really changed it. But we've got a 9,000 square mile trade area. 50% of our sales in Watertown come from outside our zip code. Plain and simple, has been that way for 20 years. And always will be, and we just need to have that.
And it just didn't recognize that, Cody. I don't know why.
We're just a different duck out here, and
maybe you can explain that. That's what I was trying to get at.
Sure. From my understanding and keep in mind, I was not involved with the account management side of the previous partnership, but from my knowledge and understanding of what took place, the biggest disconnect was the partnership with the development company versus the city. Initiatives are different at the development company from our understanding versus the initiatives here at the city. Touching on Buckle was an example you mentioned. In my experience, in our experience, and what we've seen, while Buckle has locations in Aberdeen, Sioux Falls, and Wilmer, I believe you mentioned as well, we would not put a retailer in that match list if they are not looking at your market or if they are not even going to come here. Because as I'm sure you know, and everybody here knows, retail recruitment's a process. It takes time. And if we know Buckle's not going to fit here, then we're not going to ask you to waste your time calling and emailing these brands. Some of the other things you mentioned was the disconnect from our account management team on the drive time traders. Again, just touching on that, there absolutely was a disconnect working with the development company versus the city. We were in daily conversations, our account management team was with Michelle over at the development company. Maybe that information wasn't relayed, but that again is all part of that upfront legwork that we will be doing with you all as the city leaders out of the gate. Understanding the trade areas, understanding for each specific brand, where would they be pulling from, and then what is the focus? So you mentioned that some of the picks were not what you wanted to see, or you didn't feel that they would be a good fit.
Well, they were heavy. I mean, they were heavy one way or the other. And that happened twice. That happened a couple different times, I think, in 8 years. So, we would go back and say, this is kind of how this is. This is where we see our leakage. This is where we see we have a weak spot. And so there's some of those folks just based on our demographics aren't going to come here, but some of them will talk to us. And, you know, we're willing to talk to people that maybe might be thinking about it in 2 or 3 years too. I mean, you know, I know it takes a long time. I'm the one that brought Glicks in, and it took me 4 years to get him in here. But I've talked to the guy at the Buckle, and he said, we're not coming to Watertown. I mean, flat out. And
Sure.
we're on the radar because we bothered him so much. I mean, we bugged him a lot. But, you know.
So-
Did you offer him $10?
Yeah. I don't know. It's really a different market out here.
Sure.
And so it's a hard sell. We have a hard sell because we're very underestimated. People still think we are very unsophisticated and are.
So what would be
don't
the
get it.
difference, Cody, from what we had 2 years ago from today? And being that you were working mainly with the development company who is not involved in retail, so to speak, at all. You know, all
Sure.
they did is maybe they helped send out the letters to help us try to get contacts during the recon. So what would be the difference from then and now?
Great question. So one of the biggest differences from then versus now will be how the data is utilized. In the previous partnership with the development company, you're right, the data was collected and most likely set on a shelf where it collected dust. The biggest difference would come in now is we would not only do that same upfront legwork, get that data, provide the trade areas outside of the market, farther out for each specific brand, but then that's where we would put that plan into action with you. So we would not put that data on a shelf in hopes that retail grows organically, because I'm sure you know, hope is not a good strategy. Retail will not grow organically. It takes a data-driven, proactive approach. So one of the biggest differences is we would come in and do that data, that upfront legwork, and then we would put an actionable plan for the long-term growth strategy of Watertown with your vision in place. If Buckle and some of these retailers that we come back with through the data, although the data says they're a good fit, but if you all do not like those brands, maybe you don't want a Buckle, maybe you want another type of clothing store, we would understand that, and we've updated our methodologies where we will come back and swap that match out. We're not going to focus on something that you all are not excited about. Again, this is a fluid partnership. So we would want to understand what is the long-term growth strategy, what are the retailers that you feel would be a good fit here, and then where we would provide that data to make that story real, and then utilize that with you to proactively go out and recruit retailers.
I have a question, if I could just ask. In other markets, what typically does the city group consist of? Do you have a contact person, or is there a person that's hired just to work the retail sector? I mean, for.
In cities that we partner with?
Yeah,
It really varies per city. So Williston, North Dakota, I mentioned earlier, they actually are a developer-led process. So the city takes the data, gives it directly to the developers, and they lead the recruitment for their developments. Salina, Texas, they have a dedicated economic development individual who heads up all retail process, who is our day-to-day contact. So it really varies per city and per partnership. We will work with any group, any individual, as you guys know, but we would request that there is one main point of contact day in and day out, but we also do, through Scout Touch, which you kind of mentioned earlier as well, we provide you all up to 4 access points in Scout to loop in every department under the same page. So from City Council to Economic Development to Chamber of Commerce to CVB, you all would be under one unified platform in terms of what's taking place in Watertown's economic development.
well, and I think that's maybe where we fall short, because we've got a lot of different entities, and it's, I mean, by definition, and this sounds terrible, it's nobody's job, but yet it's everybody's job. So
Right.
we kind of have that disconnect
Yeah.
ourselves, I
Do you
believe.
have any questions, Mike?
I do. I have, Cody, for your services, and obviously you're going to get paid for those, are we primarily buying data and the manipulation of data? Or to what extent are we actually getting physical bodies on the ground here helping us?
Both. So what we always say is you're buying the partnership. You're buying Buxton. What comes with that is the data, is the market intelligence, is our expertise in the retail world, our contacts in the retail world, but also that account management team that is going to come out and be here for in-person site visits, who will be involved in day-to-day conference calls with yourselves and retailers, who can come out and help the CVB understand what does that tourism and visa data mean, and as well as come out and help the existing business owners and educate them on what the data means to them as well. And then we would walk through that entire process with you. So you're buying Buxton, The data is part of that, but data is only as good as what you know to do with it. That's where Buxton comes in play, is we make that information actionable and write it in a retailer's language. So they've seen it before, they know what it means to their brand and how, and it helps them make an educated decision to come into Watertown.
So Cody, do you also put us in contact with developers that are, say, putting up strip malls and have 3, 4, 5 of those companies that you're talking about? Do you deal with the developers also?
Absolutely. So we do have a whole suite of developers that we work with in specific markets. If that is a need, if there are a need for developers to come in and run that process, absolutely. That is all baked into the overall agreement. That's not an outside charge. We will absolutely do that. Case in point is Williston, North Dakota. We helped them land a major developer that was outside of their local broker and local developer network. But absolutely, to answer your question.
Cody, I have a question, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but what businesses were you instrumental in bringing to, say, Aberdeen and Sturgis and Brookings?
That is a good question, and you're right. That is before my time. To give you an answer, I would be lying right now. So if you can give me 24 hours, I will absolutely get you an answer and get back to you.
And I will tell, in your defense, we had the last Buxton study when we went to 4 years ago, or I'm sure it was all of that. There was numerous of them listed in there that actually came to Watertown that we were able to talk to and bring in, mainly in the restaurant field is where they're at.
Sure. And just to touch on, I know you mentioned earlier, we have a lot of restaurants. A lot of restaurants were into that match list. And really, it can be a number of reasons for that. But most notably is retail follows retail. So while you mentioned Costco is not going to come here out of the gate, you're absolutely right. They probably wouldn't. But by bringing in retail, that's a stepping stone to get Costco here. That's why we structure our agreements on a multi-year partnership, is because we understand that retail recruitment doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to hit a home run in 6 months. So again, while Costco and Trader Joe's might not be a fit out of the gate, we're working to that point. We understand that is the long-term vision, and we're going to work to get to there.
Right, and it is, I want to pat all the councils back on this. When we landed the Hobby Lobby, just recently now, we've got 3 LOIs signed for developers wanting to come in, so we're excited about it. So we need to have, this is the time to get a push out for
They
us.
watch.
Absolutely.
They watch. When you open something, there's a whole slew of them that are watching. And
Yep. She's absolutely right. They do watch, and another benefit of our partnership is not only helping you to proactively go out and get developers and get developments here, but also can help you to cipher through those projects coming in. Is this developer's project a good fit? Will the data back that up, or is this one a better one? So it can actually help you to save time and decipher which one is the best fit for Watertown moving forward.
Any other questions for Cody, you guys? Anybody?
I've got one more quick one. If, for example, you're working with Brookings and you're working with us simultaneously, how does that work? If there's somebody that we're looking to bring in and there's a decision Brookings wants that same business, how does that work with you folks?
Sure. Great question. How that works is kind of like what I mentioned earlier. So if we'll just take Trader Joe's, for example, if we come back and understand that Trader Joe's is a good fit for Watertown and Brookings, what we would do in that instance is we would come in the same process. We would line out all of the market validation for each specific location in Watertown as well as in Brookings, highlighting all of the different trade areas, all of the aspects that make Watertown unique. So looking at 15, 30, 45, 60 minutes out.
And that's why that's so important that we get that right.
Absolutely. And that's part of that upfront legwork that we would be doing with you. But doing all of that upfront legwork for each specific location, providing those recruitment packages to that brand for each location. And then again, it's up to the retailer to make that final decision. We are not pushing a Trader Joe's to come to Watertown versus Brookings or vice
Right.
versa. It's third-party unbiased market validation.
I guess I have a follow-up question now, Cody, because now I'm confused. Okay, you're currently not working with Brookings.
Yes, sir. Correct.
But based on the way you just answered Bruce's question, it sounds like you wouldn't preclude the possibility of, let's say you're working with us, that you could start working with Brookings in.
That is a good question, and we would not steer away from that partnership because, again, our entire methodology, and we have several clients that are kind of on that border town that we work with both sides for you to reach out to as well. But Again, it comes down to third-party unbiased market validation. We live by that. We do not tell retailers because, again, we also work in the private sector side. So if word gets out that we're telling a retailer you need to go here versus there, in this city versus there, it hurts our other business as well. So again, it goes back to third-party unbiased market validation. We are not going to tell a brand to go here versus there. We're going to provide the data-driven story for each specific location. And then again, it's up to that retailer to make that ultimate decision.
Well, and at the end of the day, too, the broker or developer could still blow the deal. So, I mean, this isn't the final say.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks, Cody. I appreciate you getting up here, and you're going to buzz back down to Sioux Falls, catch a
Falls.
plane, take a red eye, and head to Wisconsin.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for allowing me here tonight.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and get out of this. It was very nice to meet you as well. Here's one of my cards. If you ever have any questions,
Great.
please feel free to give me a shout anytime.
Sounds good. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
And Julie, thank you for stepping in a little bit and helping us out
Good
on some
timing or bad
questions,
timing,
because
depending on your-
I know that you were very, very involved in that.
I actually still like that quite a bit, but I've got all kinds of
You've
other
had a
things to do
couple of
now.
extremely busy weeks.
I have. All
kind
right,
of-
I'm gonna send this around. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but there's t-shirts and beer koozies in here.
Yeah, we can. We paid
For
for
your
them over and
soda.
over and over.
Just wanted to make sure.
No leftover burgers in there, right?
Nope,
Okay.
nope, nope, nope.
Well, Julie, you're going to give us a little update on the 2016 highlights so far of the CVB and upcoming projects that you're seeing. So we're going to just turn it over to you and let you go at it.
All right. Well, it's been a busy 6 months. That's not it.
Removable desk guy.
Which one is it?
Just down, right there, I think.
Okay. That's it, yep. Perfect. We made them really bright so everybody'd see you guys in the crowd. I'm ordering more, so if you don't find your size, I can get you a different one. Okay, we just had Lawrence and Schiller here today, and we wanted to do kind of a trending peak season 2016. We've had some success already with that, so we want to make sure and share that with everybody. What we're going to go over, and I'll try to do this quickly, this can get a little bit long. 2016 peak campaign recap, and then I have the 2015 campaign recap, which I also have a really nice graphic for that, so if you want to just look at that, and we can skip right to the shoulder strategy. I went to the meeting. Julie Random ride shotgun with me on all of the Lawrence and Schiller, all of the co-op that we do with state tourism. So in December, before I started, her and I went to the peak season meeting in Pierre, and it's, you just go like crazy. I mean, they're throwing stuff at you all the time. So we've had an interesting first 6 months, but it's been a lot of fun. I think we've got some great marketing out.
Is that an otter?
That's an otter.
Mike just started.
That's Ottertown. Our well, you can go the other way in the zoo. You don't have to go by the otters. Actually, that's one of the gals that works for Lawrence and Schiller. That's her husband and son, because we didn't have a really good picture of the otters, so they drove up and took that for us. 2016 campaign strategy. What we did this year is our target audience is young families, which it has been for a while now, for a few years. But we kind of went away from the snowbirds and the RV people, and we kind of qualified all those people into a category called bucket listers. Our markets that we have been in since May are Western Minnesota, Fargo, Grand Forks, and La Crosse, Eau Claire. In Fargo, we've been doing some of their area magazines where when you walk into the grocery store, you walk into a hotel or whatever. These are magazines that are not subscription based and they are not for sale. They're the free ones that you see that the cities put out and the different groups put out. So the readership is pretty large. And then we go along state tourism or state tourism department co-ops with us. And so we wanted to keep consistent. So the Migrate Place is Watertown, South Dakota. Migrate Place is a marketing strategy that's the state of South Dakota has been using last year and this year. And so as you go down to the bottom, and I got a copy hoping that I could read that, but I can't. So anyway, it talks about all the different things you can do in Watertown as well as the Terry Redland Art Center. And we began putting the small map on there so that depending on where you're at, seeing the ad, it's strange how people don't really know how far away Watertown is. We found that out in Minneapolis at a show. So just people, so they know kind of where we are from and where all of this exists. This is one of our direct mail pieces. This is the big one for this year. It went out to 30,000 households. This dropped in June. It went to western and southern Minnesota, Fargo and La Crosse, Eau Claire. By July 14th, which it was only out for about 2.5 weeks, we already had 64 redemptions of that. Lawrence and Schiller said they did a direct mail piece. We had, and I'll start one on each side so everybody can see it. It's a pretty impressive piece where people can bring it in. They have to, excuse me, physically bring it into the art center, and they will get a free Terry Redland print. And when we went down to see the final copy of this and approve it, there had already been 2 of them redeemed before we got back that day. So that was pretty cool. I'm going to these are really nice, so I want you guys to see them in person. They originally had given us a piece that was just a one-dimensional piece, and it didn't open up, and it just wasn't quite what we loved. So we went back to the drawing board pretty much right in the middle of the campaign and made them start over. So we are pretty high maintenance, I think. They're kind of getting used to that now. But as you see, there's kind of a two-dimensional look to it. There's some metallic in there, and there's a little bit of glossy. It talks about the trolley and also, your free print, and it really covers really well all the different aspects in Watertown, from the zoo to the lake to the trolley and the Redland Art Center. So we are really happy with the piece, and it's performing very well. They did one out in the Black Hills, and I think they only had 100 redeemed in 4 months, so we're already up to 64 and counting. We also have a television spot that we had produced, and that one? This one. Okay, sorry. Do I have sound?
Uptown boutiques, and impressive art galleries like those found at the Terry Redlin Art Center, located at the junction of Interstate 29 and Highway 212. Make Watertown your great place in South Dakota.
screwed up. Do you want me to
Plan
start
your
that over?
getaway
We kinda
at
messed the whole first half.
visitwatertownsd.com. Spend a few days exploring Watertown, South Dakota, with its clear glacial lakes, interactive zoo exhibits, charming uptown boutiques, and impressive art galleries like those found at the Terry Redlin Art Center, located at the junction of Interstate 29 and Highway 212. Make Watertown your great place in South Dakota. Plan your getaway at visitwatertownsd.com.
Couple of things is every time we drop a new
Spend
commercial,
a few days
we,
exploring Watertown, South Dakota.
we get more calls and we get a lot more hits to our website. So, I mean, it's working. People are saying it. I'm just not very good at this, sorry. Well, oh, we're good. There we go. Anyway, as that TV spot rolls, you'll notice those are all stills. August 1st and 2nd, Lawrence and Schiller will be here, and we are going to shoot all new video and all new photo footage of Watertown. We wrote that into our budget for peak season, so we're really excited about that. Uptown has changed so much, and so we're going to get some really great footage and go forward with that. Our display marketing and remarketing, this is some of the examples that we've been using. And I have the stats for some of those. The display impressions are over 6 million. The clicks are 21,000. And what's really impressive about this, and Lawrence and Schiller was really taken back by, is our click-through rate is 0.32, average is 0.1 to 0.2, and all of our click-through rates are way above what average is. Remarketing, you can see the numbers there. The click-through rate again is pretty high, almost 3 times what it's supposed to be.
Julie, do you also promote our lakes in the region too that I haven't seen? Like on this one, I didn't see anything about Lake Kempeska.
Well, we do, and we put it in there with the photos and the video. But as far as like, boating and things like that, when we're talking to people that are in Wisconsin and those places, they can come here and certainly use the lakes. But as far as there's, we talked about a marina and those types of things at one point. We'll talk more about the lakes in the fishing type of ads that we'll do for shoulder season. We do use the lakes in a lot of the video and a lot of the photos. So what we found and what Lawrence and Schiller recommends is we really have to get the unique things to Watertown, like the Redlin Art Center and the zoo, that are unique to our size of town for the hook. And then it's our job to let them know about everything else that's here to do when they come. So our display ads, this is a little bit unique. It's very similar to what the mailer is, staying consistent. So it prompts users to interact. And also we have the little ad on the side too that you'll see them scrolling as you're online when you've looked at something once, and then it just never goes away. So we've got that going on as well. These are a video inside of an ad, which we get some good impressions with those, 427,000 impressions. And again, our click-through rate is, way up there, almost double. The view-through rate was the really unique thing about this, because the view-through rate is usually about 40%. The people view the video all the way through, and ours was 90% on this. So we're doing something right with our content. I think the creative is excellent, and I think that's why we're getting such good results. The in-article video, if you click on that, it will, as you're scrolling through, it will tell a story about Watertown. So that's really unique, and it touches on a lot of different things that there are to do here, the uniqueness of our city. We only pay for those when they watch the video all the way through 100% of the time. So, and again, our view-through rate is right in where it should be. This is a unique thing, this native content, and there's different, like the Food Network, a lot of the big, like magazines that have gone digital. We add in our impressions, which it almost looks like it's part of the actual magazine content. And so on the Food Network, which people subscribe to or go to often, and there's probably 12 different magazines that we're in with that, and they click on our content, the impressions were 964,000, which is, and this is only from May until now, so our campaign isn't even done. So I think that those are really nice numbers. Our Facebook has just gone crazy, and I don't know, part of that is after Terry Redland's passing, we did a lot of boosts and a lot of digital things, and I think that our Facebook page and our website really grew at that time. 1.3 million impressions, 30,000 clicks, and then our click-through rate again is very, very high. And our search engine marketing, our impressions are up there. Our keywords are Watertown, South Dakota fishing. Some of the ad verbiage is come reel in a walleye and the glacial lakes of Watertown. And then events, dining, shopping, and more. Plan your Watertown vacation. So we've got all of our statistics there. The top ad groups are general, fishing, and Terry Redland, when people go in to do their searches. So the sessions and website traffic, 61,000, and that's just over, about 3.5 months. And another real unique thing is the average session on there is usually probably about 60 seconds. Ours is over a minute, and so our content must be pretty interesting if people are staying on there that long. And they're on 2 pages rather than, I think, 1.75 is average. So the female, of course, is the decision maker, so she's looking at our website more often than the male. And then these are the markets. They look at all of our digital, and per population, we'll pull the top 10. And so these are people that are interested in Watertown, South Dakota for whatever reason, because they've seen it, come through on their digital or Facebook or whatever that might be. So I just pulled it about a week ago. This is a little bit old. And Dallas came up in Denver, so in the top 10. So the 2015 shoulder season recap, do you want to see what we're going to do this year, or do you want to see what we did last year? I can just go through this kind of quick. You can kind of look at it. We'd made a lot of changes, and we got some really cool stuff that we're going to do this year that I think you'll like. Last year we were up 50%, our website traffic over 2014, so that's good. The females really are looking, so I think all the guys are hunting, and so they're online looking to see if they can find any webcams and see if their counterparts are here behaving themselves. I don't know. It's just interesting how that went way up over the hunting season. This is interesting. This is our shoulder season occupancy rate. There's something called the STAR report that all of the hotels subscribe to. And I've been talking to Kirk at State Tourism, and he is going to try to pull that just for Watertown as well. But this is one that Lawrence and Schiller pulls. And so this is last year over 2014. And it looks good. We were up, going the right direction. So this is a recommendation they made today for shoulder season. We switched, like I said, from outdoorsmen instead of the snowbirds, because that was kind of a real small target. We called them bucket listers, and we kept them in there, but we thought maybe we would pull some other people in. They're creative. Because of Terry Redland's passing, we have gotten a lot of momentum from that. And it might not ever happen again, but we just feel that since it's top of mind, that we would use some of that this year in our shoulder season. And so we've come up with a way to do that I think will really make sense. Some of Terry's quotes, all I ever wanted to do was hunt and fish and wander the woods. Nature was my favorite teacher. So some of his quotes, which are classic. And the graphics can be changed out as we get towards winter. We'll put a winter graphic in there. I know Don said he can't drive his car through that, but I go hunting and it looks like that a lot where I go. This is the one we actually chose, and we thought that this one we liked the graphic. It was more of a storybook type of a font on there. And so we did like the graphic on there. We had a few different ones, and we can switch those out as we go. I asked Julie to get out her most popular prints, and I think those probably would speak maybe to the bucket listers and not the hunters, so we'll switch those out periodically. But we decided, Julie shared that Terry would want us to capitalize on whatever was going to work to make people want to come here. So this is another one. This is a bucket lister ad as well. And so another quote from Terry Redlin there at the top. I'm a small town boy, always have been, always will be. So the strategy, we've got several different mediums we're going to use, as we always do. These are the markets that we are going to be in for the outdoorsmen: Minneapolis, Rochester, Mason City, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Mankato, Omaha, Des Moines, and Sioux City. And this is with the print advertising. The television sponsorship, we are going to do Outdoorsman Adventures, which will be filming 5 shows in South Dakota around or in Watertown. We'll have 25 spots per week on those shows, and sponsor mentions during every show. So we've got that, and then promotion in of outdoors print columns as well.
Is that Gary?
It's Gary, yeah. Yep. And then also we're going to do Wing Shooting USA, which this is national. And so this was a really good buy for the money. National coverage across 8 networks. We get 1,430 spots per week, 5.4 million impressions. So that was one we hadn't used before, but they had used him, this individual, I think State Tourism used him at one point and got real good results. The partnership that we were really interested in, because of the timing of everything and Terry's passing, was we have secured a spot in the Ducks Unlimited publication. And they're a very, very loyal group of people. Some of them maybe have been here, haven't been here, but maybe now is the time for them to come hunting, because maybe they want to come and see, the originals of some of the things that they have hanging on their walls. Terry Redlin, over the years, of course, you probably all know, raised over $40 million in conservation funds for Ducks Unlimited. So we thought that that would be a great place. And then the ads that I showed earlier in the storybook setting were the ones we were going to use in there, with the art that's recognizable to the Ducks Unlimited. And then Midwest Game and Fish in the Midwest region in October. Full page, full color ads. And then the campaign goals for display ads, we're going for $3.3 million. And then the click-through rate, we're going to stick with hoping we get that high click-through rate. Facebook as well, we'll be running, campaigns on Facebook, web campaigns, really highlighting the hunting and fishing. Some of this stuff is from last year because we don't have the new stuff yet, so we'll be able to implement some of the new things. And then we also have an endorsement that we have contacted Kent Herbeck from the Minnesota Twins, and are in negotiations with his agent for him to endorse Watertown, South Dakota as a place to come if you're going to be hunting in South Dakota. And we might try to write in maybe some appearances as well with that. It might cut into his hunting schedule. I know he's quite a sportsman, but he's a nationally recognized celebrity person, so we wanted to go along those lines and just see if that was maybe something that we could pull together. So that's kind of a fun thing that we're going to do. Target markets for the bucket listers: Minneapolis, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Fargo, Grand Forks, and this is all of our print advertising. And then when we get into digital, it's wider. It's much, much wider. So our campaign goals there for Facebook. Our native content again, where it just looks like it's part of the article, part of the story, or part of the page. And those have gone really well, so we're going to continue with those. And we do, a traditional mix, 54%, digital 37%, and then there's some production. So out of our budget, that's kind of how that's all split up. Our campaign is going to run through the end of December. And there will be fishing and things like that talked about as well. The TV part of it runs through the end of December. And I know we were asking, Don asked the question, they were going to take a little break because a lot of the hunters will plan their trip, and then there's that later hunting season too. And so they're going to look into maybe trying to fill in that gap a little bit or just see what's best for us to do there. But it's a pretty lofty order, so I think they've been producing really well for us. The digital, I'll just say that we did a lot of switching out when we have our digital ads. That's one of the things that we offer people that come and they have events or whatever. The 4th of July event, or 3rd of July fireworks event, we switched out 6 weeks of our digital, and we incorporated some advertising for the 3rd of July. And I know we hit Minnesota very hard. There's no fireworks in Minnesota. And they also hit North Dakota. And as we were parking cars out there that night, I would say we had close to 50% of the cars were from Minnesota or North Dakota. So I know it worked. So that was really nice, and it cost us no additional money. We just switched out the creative. And so that's something that's really nice about digital is we've got this in place, and so when there is an event in town, we'll do that for Vintigues as well. So when there's an event in town, as long as I have the digital media that I need in the format that I need, we can switch that out. And as you can see, the numbers we get are phenomenal. So that is the end.
Well, it's exciting to see all that, and maybe there's some questions. I do want to mention that Don is our liaison for the CVB, so it's I've heard some of this and have visited with you, Julie, so if questions, go ahead and throw them out there.
Just a comment, the digital marketing aspect of it is pretty exciting because of the flexibility, as was mentioned. And what's, I think, so neat about it is you can measure it. The challenge is going to be that next step of measurement. I mean, how do we know if it's been successful? Well, the best barometer we have is our third penny. That's really kind of how we've been looking at it in the past. That's the only measurement we have. So how do you manage that challenge? How are we going to get our return on investment measured to the very end? That's the tough challenge.
Well, they have, and I talked to after the 3rd of July, I know the mayor and I talked, state tourism, and you'll see on here, Lawrence and Schiller, there's a way to quantify all of this stuff. And I'll give you guys if you each want one or if you want a couple of them or whatever. But this talks about, this is a 2015 co-op campaign. And I know the mayor was at the tourism conference. There's a way to quantify all this stuff. John was at the tourism conference. There's a formula that you can plug in a whole bunch of information, and it actually will measure. There's hotel occupancy that's in there. There's tax dollars that are in there. There's local versus the traveling public. So we can do that for any event. And I think, to measure it down to the penny isn't going to happen, but I think we have to, if we use the same formula every time, it's all going to be comparable over the board. And I think if we keep growing, I think that that's a good measurement, but there is a way to measure it. And sometimes when you're looking at economic development, you just look at it and go, that can't be possible. I know I ran the numbers. Kirk Halstead from State Tourism and I were on the phone for 45 minutes, and we ran the numbers for the 3rd of July fireworks. And we came up with a conservative number, and we didn't even put the multiplier in there because we thought a lot of people were staying with family. And the economic impact of that 2-day event was $3.5 million. And we shaved a lot off to get there because we didn't want it to be, we wanted it to be a number we could swallow. So, as for last year, our numbers for 2015, they figured the economic impact for the shoulder season, which ran July through January last year, was $99 million. There's formulas we can plug this stuff into, and I guess it's everybody uses them. The tourism, the state tourisms, the advertising agencies use them, so there must be some truth to it. But if you can count how many people are pinging that, and then your results and your your hotel occupancies and things like that, there's somebody a lot smarter than me that's putting those formulas together. I just put the numbers in, so. But it's impressive, and I mean, we have, for the ball tournaments and things like that, I have a shorter one that I can plug numbers into, and they figure that when people are in town with a family, and 3.11 is the number of members in a family, which is okay. 3.11, they figure that they spend $900 a day. And when you think of hotel and you think of food and all of that, and I think in the publication we looked at, that sports publication, it was pretty close to that. I think it was $874 or something, so that's pretty close. So, I mean, there's formulas out there that we can measure it.
And I just think it's great that we're doing that so we can build a history. We have nothing to compare it to, and we've got to start those baseline things. So as we keep going along, we can make a lot more intelligent
Well,
decisions going forward.
If anybody knows anything about me, I love this stuff. I mean, these analytics, I just will sit and look at them for hours. And so I try to measure everything. I mean, I think somebody in our meeting today pointed something out, and they're like, well, we need to measure that. And I can't believe I didn't think of that. So, but the one thing, planned for 2017, the one thing that
You're gonna say that.
has to happen is we have to have software. I have no software. This is, we're way past the sticky note, like random spreadsheet stage here. So I think having that stuff and then working with the website developer so all the website stuff can go in there too, we'll have a lot of data. And so, and then you get to listen to me even longer because I'll have more data. So then the presentation gets longer.
Perfect. How about just like maybe one more question if you have, otherwise we got a break for a couple of minutes and we'll start our council at 7. Any other quick
I
question?
got one quick one. What did we spend with Lawrence and Schiller on this whole marketing project?
On peak season, we didn't spend anything. For shoulder season this year, state tourism is going to kick in $50,000, and the bid board is going to pay $75,000. The Watertown and the taxes that fund us don't pay anything. So this is all, we sit down with them, and state tourism really doesn't say anything. I mean, they give us the tools, and she's there taking notes, but they let us run with it, and it's fabulous. I mean, it's a lot of fun because you can get as creative as you want to and move things around. And we kind of have run Lawrence and Schiller through the gamut right now because during peak season we put the brakes on because I didn't like it, and it had been the same for 3 years and not changed.
Right.
And I said, we've got to do something different. And so we came up with a whole new game plan.
Thanks, Julie. This is exciting. We want to
It
see
is.
this stuff happen. All
It
right,
is.
appreciate it.
I'll give you a
Thank
couple
so
of these
much.
just for fun, but thank you very
Okay.
much for having me.
All right, at this time I will adjourn the meeting. We'll be back at 7 o'clock for the.
Well, there's spots where it's not a building.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday, July 18th, 2016 City Council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Shelley, if you'll take roll call.
Okay. Albertson.
Here.
Bueller. Danforth.
Here.
Manti,
Here.
Riefenberger absent. Roby,
Here.
Solom,
Here.
Thorson,
Here.
Tupper,
Here.
Philhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. At this time, I will look for a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
So move.
Motion by Bruce, second by Beth. Any concerns, any changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2, approval of the agenda. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Randy, second by Glenn. Any questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 3, approval of the council committee assignments. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Beth, second by John. Any questions on this? Pretty much this year, after my email went out, everybody just kind of thought, well, let's stay with what we got, and I did it. So not a lot had changed on that. So no questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, appointments to fill vacancies on city boards and commissions. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Dan. Second by Beth. Any questions?
Just curious, Mayor, on those that you're reappointing, any resistance to serving another?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, it went very, very well. Yeah, very well. I believe that there was one on the municipal utilities. Ms. Ernie White decided that he needed to fully retire, so he left that, and we put Greg on there, so that went well.
Any discussion on that open spot with the urban renewal?
We haven't filled the urban renewal board spot yet. I think I'm going to wait for just a little while and really get the right person in there that you guys need. Fair enough? Okay, so I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Number 5, ordinance number 1608, amending sections 3.0101 and 3.0109 and 3.0110 and 3.0112 of Title III regarding animals, poultry, and so forth for the city of Watertown. Now, this is a second reading. Do we need to have this public? Okay. So I will look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So
Motion by
moved.
Mike, second by Glenn. Any questions on that? I think it went well. Justin, you got any comments you want to make on it, or are you good to go with it?
I'm good to go, Mayor.
All right. I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, approval of the insurance policies and authorization payment of premiums for general liability, public officials liability, auto liability, and physical damage, law enforcement liability, buildings and content, equipment property damage, and equipment breakdown, boiler and machinery coverage. Shelley, if you want to maybe give us a little update on what's going on this. Dan, you got to stay for the whole thing. You know that, don't you? You can't be jetting out on us like that. Oh, okay.
David, you got your phone?
Yeah, Dave, you got your phone? He didn't take your phone this time, did he? Okay. All right, we're okay. All right, just checking.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot. I was hoping I could do a Justin and say, I'm good. But,
Okay, so what I'll look for is a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Beth. Are there any questions for Shelley?
Just what does equipment breakdown cover, Shelley? I mean, you don't have to give me detailed, but
that's a good question. It used to always be called boiler and machinery. What that is it's a supplement to the property. It's whatever property doesn't cover. So it's kind of a rider, kind of like our law enforcement. It just covers things that our other coverages don't. And one of them is boilers. That's
so
what
like
they
let's
always
say lightning hit City Hall and it blew out the air conditioner on top and the regular
Right.
coverage covered
Right.
the building,
Does-
then
yeah,
this
right.
would cover that, yep.
Right,
That makes sense.
or some things don't cover a natural disaster,
Yeah.
so then you have an extra, yep.
Yep. It's like Aflac for the city, so.
Shelley, do you know roughly how much of a change this was from last year?
Yes, the premium, total premium that we're requesting for the city proper, because we're all one city, but utilities pays their own, is $271,593.32, which is roughly 50% of the total premium. Our premium actually decreased by $26,000 from last year. Two reasons for that. One, the Public Assurance Alliance actually changed their allocation method for the general liability coverage. And so there's certain things that they used to break out based off of a different formula. They kind of threw that all together. So some other departments are taking more of that share, and it's by expenditures. And so utilities is actually taking more of that cost than they have in the past. The other thing is that every year they automatically adjust for inflation on the buildings and content of 4%. Then every 3 years they come back through and reevaluate and put that back at that 85%. They did that this last year, and it actually caused our premium for buildings and contents to decrease $10,000 as well. So we were within what we had budgeted for 2016, and we're doing very well. So.
Shelley, how does this fit into, like our new buildings that we're building, the softball, the rec center, the ice arena?
We'll probably see a tad bit of an increase next year. Yep.
So, but I mean, do they go right on the rolls as they get completed then at that point?
Yep,
Okay.
they have to be substantially completed. Otherwise, like Pitts right now would be carrying any, if something would happen, they would carry the insurance. Once they're substantially complete, then they become our responsibility, and we have to put them on our insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One more question over here. We're always hearing the Public Assurance Alliance is definitely the way to go. When was the last time we compared this, or do we have any idea what a commercial carrier would cost us?
Yes, in fact, for the building and contents, we used to have a commercial carrier, Travelers, and in probably 4 years ago, they came back and had about an $82,000 premium increase in 1 year. And so at that point, and they were not going to negotiate, and it was only going to get worse. And so that's when we contacted the Public Assurance Alliance and asked them to come and talk to us about actually carrying that. We've been, for the general liability, law enforcement, auto, we've been with them for a long, long time, and we had kind of jumped that ship a long time ago and got a lot better rates. But for the building contents, we have saved quite a bit of money over the last 4 years by going to the Public Assurance Alliance.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 7, authorization for the mayor to sign a contract for professional services with RS Architects to design the ice complex. Now, this is, Justin, if you want to come up, I appreciate it. Justin is with RS Architects. We're looking at the contract, and there will have to be some changes made. I think one of them did not have the Helms and Associates, if I was looking on that. I know, Justin, you've been working on this. And it does already show a CMAR, which in fact it will not. There has not been a CMAR hired as of yet, so that actually should be stricken out of there. So what I'd like to do, Justin, is you kind of give us an idea. I know there's some people here that want to talk ice also. I would give them an opportunity if they want to visit with us and just kind of go through the process where we're at right now and how this contract works and who the other engineering firms are that we're dealing with.
Okay. As far as
Justin,
it
if
goes,
you would give your name, full name, and
Yep.
who you work for.
Justin Olson with RS Architects out of Sioux Falls.
Grew up in Watertown.
Grew up in Watertown, born and raised. See a few authority figures on the table up there that I may have ran into. Anyway,
just going back a little bit on this project, I believe we were contacted in 2014 to kind of look at this, what had been done beforehand, and we were brought in to kind of see what we could do with 2 sheets of ice, and working with the mayor and the committee and everyone to kind of figure out what the city of Watertown wanted, what they didn't want, and everything in between. In that time, we've gone through quite a few plan changes. Building's got bigger, it's gotten smaller again. We've worked with the mayor and the committee quite a bit. And we've also, during that time, we've also, on our own accord as an office and with some of the members and the mayor, also went around to some of the newer ice facilities in the eastern part of the state to figure out what they did, their process, what works, what doesn't, and kind of applied that knowledge to this project itself. So what we ended up with what was kind of a floor plan that we have now that, kind of everybody's said, that looks pretty good, and that's where we are. And so we put together this contract for the construction documents, including our team, for approval.
Yeah, and I want to be clear so that everybody understands that RS Architects were not the only architects that we were dealing with. We had 2 other firms that we were dealing with on this, and it was just a real struggle because we couldn't seem to get this project under the $15-16 million. And when we talked to Justin, and we had hockey people there, and we had figure skaters on board in this committee, there's actually 350 figure skaters that will be used in this facility. It's quite amazing. And one of the biggest concerns of the whole thing was humidity. There's problems in some of the ice that's been gone through in other cities where there's like just certain smells, things just kind of hang there, and things aren't going right. So what RSH or RS Architects has looked at, if you'll see in the contract, as I mentioned, Helms is the civil engineers that they would be using. Stevens Architect. Now, I did give all of you a copy of some of their projects that they worked on, and I just kind of want to touch base on this. They have the Mesa Arena expansion in Minot, North Dakota, the St. Louis Park Rec Center Ice Arena in St. Louis Park, the Yost Ice Arena in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That was the Michigan's men and women's hockey facility. The LeBon Arena in Madison, Wisconsin, which is the Division I program. They also have dealt with the John McInnes Student Ice Arena in Houghton, Michigan, Division I men's hockey program. The Pasadena Ice Skating Center in Pasadena, California, built in 2011. And it goes on, the Amsoil Arena, Duluth, Minnesota, which is the men's and women's hockey facility, Division I program. The Schwann Super Rink National Sports Center in Blaine, Minnesota, which also has year-round ice on 2 of the floors. There was 4 ice rinks built on this one, and it's the largest in North America. Now, this actually came as a recommendation, and I know, Don, you mentioned his name. Joe down in Sioux Falls recommended the ice to be worked with this particular engineer, Stevens Engineering, and they were brought on board. So if you want to touch on some of that, Justin, I would appreciate it.
Yes, certainly. From our standpoint, we're not the experts for the ice portion, and that's why we've brought a firm like Stevens Engineers on board, and we will work closely with them to make sure we get the ice and the building functioning the way they need to function for the way you're going to use it. Now, some of the problems that we found with the humidity in some of these buildings, and that kind of ties into what we've talked about, going and visiting these and figuring out what's working and what's not. Some of the changes of the use of the building has a lot to do with that. So as long as we know upfront how that's going to work, and we'll work very closely with Stevens as well as Mettler Sickmiller up in Aberdeen. They're kind of the M&E on our team. They also did the ice facility up in Aberdeen in 2003, I believe. And so they're well aware of what it kind of takes to make all that work. And that's part of what we do when we've got a kind of specialized area in a building, is we'll bring somebody on board who has the knowledge, and we'll work closely with them to make sure our portion works in harmony with their portion. So that's just, kind of the beginning of the process, and that's where we'll get to.
Right. I did want to touch base also, just a little bit from Gary. I know that most of you probably do know Gary Stanley, who's worked on the police station, I believe, one of the fire stations here in town, numerous projects. Started RSA, before RSA, spent 22 years with TSP in Sioux Falls, became a partner in 1976. He also worked on the Sioux Falls Arena, renovated for the first sheet of ice, in charge of the renovation of the Huron Arena, worked at the Rapid City Rushmore Plaza, architectural work on the Barnett Center in Aberdeen, worked on the Frost Arena at SDSU and other large venue items. Also project director for the Sanford Wellness Center, which opened in '89, continued to do additions and remodels. I just kind of wanted to touch base. So if you didn't know who Gary was, that's just kind of a little bit of a bio on him. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up for Justin for any questions. There will need to be, as I said, Justin, probably some adjustments to that contract, because we will go out and look at CMAR. We had, for some reason, the one got in there. It shouldn't have been at this particular point. So we probably will, we will go out and get the bids on the CMAR. Bruce, I want to just comment on that. You were instrumental in bringing that CMAR in on the on our community center, and I think it worked out extremely well. I thought it was just an amazing thing. I was very much against the CMAR at first, but after hearing and listening and see how it's gone, that's where I'm at. So I think this is a project, even though it's $8 million, it's not a $22 million community center. $8 million is a lot, and I think it would serve very well for a CMAR. So I'm going to open it up for discussions, and I would also say, I know there's some people here that are familiar with ICE, that have worked on the project with us over and over and over for months and months and months, because like I said, when, like you said, it went from this size to this size, back to this size, and where we are today.
Sure.
I'll open it up.
Yes.
I'd like to start. I just got a couple questions here. But when we talk about the budget that's noted in here, it says that its budget exceeds $8 million. What have you used as the basis to come up with an $8 million budget? How comfortable are you that we're going to be able to hit that number or less? What was your basis for coming up with the $8 million?
Well, that's a question that it's always at this point tough to say where we'll end up once we get to that point. I will say, up until this point, we've been working with Great Construction, and they've been kind of keeping updated with the numbers as far as getting budget numbers put together, calling subcontractors, and staying on top. That's how this numbers kind of came about up to this point. So we haven't been doing a lot of the estimating ourselves. It's been through a contractor.
When we have multiple disciplines that are going to be associated from an engineering standpoint here, which is normal.
Yep.
Where does the buck stop on something like this? There is an area in here on errors and omissions, for example. Mm-hmm. Let's say for some reason we have a problem with the ventilation. I mean, who does that buck stop with when we have multiple disciplines that are associated with this? And I believe they would typically be under your contract, correct?
If all of the engineers are under our contract, yeah, then they're working for us, for you, yes.
Okay, so you would be contracting most of them, and I do want to know which ones are not going to be included here. That's my next question. But, so where does the errors and omissions thing come into play on this?
Well, that depends on what it is, I guess. You know, if it's something that was an oversight in the field that got missed during construction, you know, it depends on who and where it happened. I mean, if it's an out and out omission on the plans that needed to be taken care of, well, then we cross that bridge with the city when we get there. I will say, from past experience working with the city on our projects, including the police department, the fire station, and all those public projects, we've had a very good track record of not getting into those situations, you know, other than a few minor hiccups here or there. I think, you know, we try to pride ourselves, me especially being from the area, in running with these projects and making sure, you know, and nothing's perfect, but we certainly try to do our best as a company when it comes to something like that, so.
So of all the services that we will be needing, I know you got a number of them listed within the contract. Specifically, which ones will not be included that we would need to have services?
As far as engineering services?
Any type of engineering services to include testing.
I believe everything, as far as engineering, would be under us. I think civil, mechanical, electrical, structural, and obviously architectural are under this contract. HVAC, yeah, mechanical, electrical, HVAC. And the Stevens Engineers too, as our consultant for the ice portion.
Justin, I noticed in there that it said using some materials from the old ice rink. What might that be?
Well, there was a thought, I believe, at one time that maybe the old the boards and battens could be used from the existing rink.
No, I don't think we're able to do that because
Right.
we have a smaller ice rink
Yep.
right now than, but there are some, maybe
Was
one of
it-
you guys could help me out in the back there.
Yeah, it's 5 foot short.
Come on up. I know that we aren't going to use the backer boards, but there's probably some other things within there. I know speaker systems, stuff like that.
Jack Rasmussen. Our current arena is 5 foot shorter than a normal standard rink. Plus the boards that we have now, I don't know if we could even take them out because they're so old and there's actually holes in them right now. And I think just moving them would probably destruct them. And they were actually built for outdoor roller hockey. They weren't made for an ice arena. And that company is long out of business, so even if we were to wreck what we have now, we'd have to construct something from scratch. So moving them was just not going to happen. The compressor units were basically made for a frozen section in a grocery store. We've adapted them to make them work. The only thing that I know that we would really want to take is the new sound system that we fundraised and got last year and I put in. Other than that, there's not a lot that's going to be transferred. And that still would only be enough for one arena. The other one, we'd have to come up with another sound system.
And Jack, you were involved in the very beginning of this.
Yeah. When we first started, I was the president of the Hockey Association. And so then I was asked to be on the committee designing the building, you know, laying out the building, not really designing it. I think between the other members of the committee, we actually came up with this layout, and this is, I don't know, how many times did we change it?
A lot.
We were very involved in the beginning. We probably changed it 4 or 5 times to get this. I mean, the members of our committee, we literally have been in hundreds of arenas. And that's one thing when you're in an arena all day long, you look at what you like and what you don't like. And we kind of laid this out how we wanted it. And even one of our members is a referee, and you always want the referee to have a back door to get out so he doesn't have to go through the front. It's just little things like that that makes a big difference in an arena when it really welcomes you. You know, and so we really tried to move the rooms around. You know, when we first started, the rooms were just laid out not at all, not what we'd want. We really moved things around a lot, tried to get the seating where we wanted it. The lobby, you want it nice and open for the people congregating in and out. So in the beginning, we really were heavily involved. Once we got it to where we, like this, where we wanted it, then we just kind of lay idle until today. I know I talked to Don last week about this, and I was concerned. You know, we want this to move forward really badly, but the last thing we want to do is build something that's going to put us in a corner. I mean, we waited so long for this. I don't want it to be wrong. So I was very concerned, that, no offense, that you've never designed an ice arena. But when I found out that you were using Stevens, I mean, they're a pretty big name in the ice arena, the compressors and the ice part of it. So I'm just really excited that we're coming this far. So, I mean, it's been a very, very, very long journey. I mean, I've been coaching with Mark for 15 years. We've been coaching. So we've been dreaming about this day as moving forward. So
I also want to mention, you know, Bob was on the committee, Mark was there all the time, and I apologize for a name
Mark Solberg.
in the dark blue shirt.
Tom Lennox.
Tom. And then, of course, John was on the committee also, and John needed that back door for himself. It wasn't for the referees, I'm just telling you. Yeah. Mark or Tom or Bob, you guys want to come up and talk about some of the process that we vented through this thing? You know, we do have, is it 1,800 plus seats?
Yes.
In the facility, so that if hockey is out there and it's a state tournament, we can hold those. There are some cities that have built new facilities less than that, and they can't carry those tournaments. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I guess I'd probably just add, the reason we went through so many iterations was for the seating, trying to maximize their seating, to potentially hold a state tournament. Also, we were well aware of the budget for the arena, so we wanted to maximize the facilities for the budget that we had. And I guess I'm glad that you mentioned humidity, because that's a big deal in the hockey rink. Our current facility has a humidity problem, so our locker rooms primarily is where we have the humidity problem, and requires a lot of cleanup every year just to keep them safe. And so I'm glad that Stevens is involved. I don't know if they include the climate control and the humidity or whatnot, but yeah, it's exciting that this is moving forward.
I've got a couple of questions. Justin, I'm the guy that's behind the scenes. You probably expected me to come with some questions. I'm a big supporter of this project. Really want it to go forward as soon as we can. I do have some questions, though. When we built the multipurpose facility, the big rec center, I, along with others, promoted that project throughout the community. The mayor and I made some joint sales calls, if you will, and just on promoting that facility. And I really enjoyed doing that because I had so much confidence in what we were doing. And I know that some people sitting up here put a lot of effort into that process. It was well vetted out, and I could promote that project with 100% confidence we're doing the best we can. When I went up and took the tour of the facility, you walk around and you don't grasp what goes into design, I think, until you start walking through something like that. We're going to have a world-class facility up there. Are we going to get it 100% right? I don't think that's possible. I think we're going to be close, and I think we're going to get all the big things right. I mention that because, no offense to your firm, I know it's a reputable firm. I've researched you guys. You got a long-standing history. You've done good work for the city. I am concerned that we don't have it. You tell me if I'm wrong, but in building and designing a hockey facility, you look at the reason why JLG got selected for the multi-purpose facility. It was their experience, I believe. It was they had shown they had done this before, and they knew that type of facility. I'm not convinced that RSA can do that or has that experience. Again, good firm, reputable firm, not in question, done great work for the city, but you're going to have some great engineering firms you're working with. And I've been told Stevens is the best in the business, so that's great to hear. But in terms of the overall design, that falls back on the architect. And I'm concerned we're going to miss something because it's your first arena, hockey arena.
It is our first arena. And just to go back, I should say our first ice arena. But let's just go back to what Steve had mentioned. Our company's founder, Gary Stanley, has been in the business for 50 years. And, you know, Mayor Thorson named off some of the larger arenas he's worked on. Now, they're not strictly ice arenas, but they do, in some cases, hold ice under the floor. As far as doing an ice arena, I'm not too confident, and this is no shot at anybody in this state, a lot of good architects in this state. I don't know if any architect in this state could confidently say that they're ice facility experts. That's just the nature of working in a state like this, where you've got to be able to do a lot of things. You can't specialize on one thing. So that's where we bring in these experts like the Stevens engineers, and we work closely with them to make sure we're getting that portion of the project right. The building itself, we've done numbers of buildings this size or bigger, including a couple recent projects in Sioux Falls for Great Life, 50,000 square foot plus, multi-use fitness centers, similar to your rec center, including pools, including turf, including all of this, that are very successful down in Sioux Falls and just opened, and everybody's really excited about them. So, short answer, no, we're not ice facility experts, but we're willing to put in the work, and I think we have already, to make sure we're going to do our best to get it right as we move forward.
I don't doubt that. I think it's accurate to say, though, that's a little bit of a risk factor. That's just how I look at it. If somebody's done 10 ice arenas, they've designed them, they've been through it, they've maybe seen, ooh, we could have done that a little bit differently. That's where I'm hung up a little bit. And one of the guys that was involved in the facility south of here told me 70% of your criteria should be past experience on ice facilities. 70% of your evaluation should be that point alone. And tell me if I'm putting too much emphasis on that, but it's really a concern for me.
Who's been the architect in some of these other projects?
Well, I would like to just add to this a little bit, because if you look at the Stevens Engineering website, which I'm sure you have, they are also a consulting engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So they are going to be working hand in hand with the designing of this building and making sure that the humidity is controlled, that the ice is controlled, that, you know, that's the last thing, Don, we'd ever want. You're absolutely right. We want to make sure if we're going to put $8 million into this, that we're not going to have a humidity issue.
Certainly, and that's why I mentioned we will be working, you know, as this thing moves forward, and if we're brought on, we're going to be working very closely with them during the design process. It would be no different than us putting a pool. We have the same kind of humidity issues when we put a pool in a building, and that's where we work closely with the experts for the pools. It's just a similar kind of working relationship.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, Bruce or Mike, I don't think JLG builds pools, but they did bring in an expert pool person for humidity control.
They have actually worked with folks in the past that have done that.
They've had a number of projects that
Yeah.
included pools. I will
No,
say
but
it.
that's what I'm just saying. I mean, they are not the expert in building a pool, but
Right.
they hire experts to design the pool and to take care of the humidity and the water issues.
Right. Well, the one exception to that, though, Mayor, is that we have found with JLG is they've done a lot of both primarily public facilities for like schools and recreational facilities, and a number of them did have aquatics elements to that.
No,
But-
I don't disagree
But
with
the,
that.
the,
but
the
I'm
difference,
just saying.
and in every case, they do not have internal design capabilities, so they have had to go out. What we have found is advantageous in that area is, now, we had our aquatics engineering firm that was under their contract, under JLG's contract, that is telling us this, and what we were able to do is identify areas within their design and their recommendations that JLG has found don't work, or that there might be concerns with. And I think that's the one thing that you might not get if you haven't done that, is they know they've had issues with other products and other projects that they've had before. They know what some of those issues are, so it does help in the overall design, and that kind of helped us weed out some of that.
Probably not in so much the design as the product that's used, whether it be a stainless steel or an aluminum versus steel or something. Isn't that kind of where you're coming from?
Kind of all of the
I know that
above.
we ran into
Yeah,
those.
kind of
issues.
all the above. A lot of it was materials,
But
but it was.
we depended a whole lot upon the pool designers and
Right.
and engineers, yes.
Yeah, and in this particular case, quite honest, you're gonna be, your HVAC people are gonna be extremely important in this.
Yeah.
They are not gonna be under your firm, meaning within your firm, they're gonna be a subcontracted engineering firm, correct?
Correct.
So, again, that's kind of like what we found with the rec center, was we had to be able to contain, it's not just building the pool and what makes the pool work. The HVAC people were absolutely critical. They're probably as critical, probably more critical in this case, having had experience with ice than these guys are.
I have a question, Mayor, and I think I know the answer to this, but Stevens, do they have the capability to be a full facility architect on a project like this?
I do not believe they're architects. They help design, but they're not a full capable architect like this for the building.
Not trying to steal the job away from
no,
them. But here, I will just say this,
I hear you.
and when we did the community center, we had a pretty arduous process where we interviewed a lot of these folks, and most everyone it came down to, the architects were experienced in building that type of facility. And, of course, cost came into play as well. But we did look at their capabilities and the history, what they had done in the past. We didn't really have that process. And no offense, Mayor, but we just didn't really do that, in my opinion, on this facility.
But I think we did, and because you weren't involved as closely on this particular one as you were on the community center. You weren't, you were not the guy like you and Mike were on the other.
Okay.
Would you agree or disagree?
Well, I don't know. I guess
No, you weren't
Mike,
doing
the
that.
question that I would have is, if that being the case, if that being said, what other organizations did we interview then that have experience in ice, as far as architecture goes?
Well, we had our local David Todd drew up an ice facility, and it came in at about
But he has
$17
experience?
million.
Did he have experience?
No, you asked me who did. I'm going to give you the first part. I have no idea if David has ever done ice other than the Moss Arena. Who did the Moss?
That I don't know. Right
Well,
off the top
Jack,
of my
Jack,
head.
you know. Who designed the Moss Arena?
I think the hockey parents did.
Okay, the hockey parent.
The locker rooms
Yeah.
were drawn on a napkin.
All right.
We started building them the next day.
Okay, and then we had AEI. What was it? AEI, Shelley, you wrote the checks. AEI, AES out of Sioux Falls, AE something, Len Chemnitz. Len Chemnitz, I believe, came in with the design for us. And that also came in at about $16 million. And when we told them, and they understood where we were at for our budget, they came back and really it was 2 sheets of ice, but you couldn't hardly have any seating in the thing.
And I just want to mention another thing too, and that is that we've got this $8 million estimate, and that's, I'm assuming, coming from you and perhaps some communication with Gray Construction. Is that correct?
Correct.
One thing we also learned in the process that, Mike, the mayor, we went through with the community center was that the earlier you can get a CMAR involved in these things, the better off you're going to be at getting more of an accurate estimate. And I'll tell you what he said, what our construction, what our CMAR said, as well as our owner's advocate that we use, or owner's, thank you, representative, thank you, Dick Strasberg. They said you want to get somebody involved right away on that estimate because architects are terrible at giving us a good estimate. Now, I will say also that in this we get a little history with some of this too. When you go back to our event center, this kind of thing can happen where, okay, yeah, it's going to be $8 million, and then when it finally comes down to it, we haven't got a lot of accurate information or data. All of a sudden, we're going, geez, sorry, dudes, we need another $2 million on a change order. That scares me in this process a little bit.
I've got a question, and maybe this is what you were asking with your first question, Mike. As to your compensation, I mean, the contract says basic service shall be X%. I mean, all the things that we're talking about, is that part of the basic fee? So that is included in that?
As far as all the engineers and whatnot, yes. Yep.
Can I ask a question real quick about Stevens Engineer? I was looking just briefly at what role they played in some of these ice rinks that they developed. Now, are you going to retain them as the ice engineer, or are you going to retain them as the inspector and quality assurance?
Well, I don't know if we've got that far. At this point,
That would make a big difference to me, you know. in
there's
terms-
certainly going to be engineer up front and giving our advice and helping us along the way as far as getting this thing designed. I can't speak through the entire contract. I don't know how far our contract goes at this point, if it's through CA or whatnot. But without it being in front of me and reading through it, I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head.
Did Stevens do the Sioux Falls ice? Do we know that?
I don't know, but I do know they mentioned that they did review even putting ice in the current rec center or civic arena here at one point. So, I mean, they've been in this area. They're familiar with what's going on here.
I believe no. I think the compressor.
Jack, if you'll come up and use the mic for us, please.
Jack Rasmussen. I believe when I went down and toured the Sioux Falls Arena, I can't remember the name of the facility that did their compressors, but they were out of Virginia, Minnesota. I do remember that. So I don't think Stevens is out of Minnesota, are they?
No, they're out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be the same.
Was your reference to the new facility down there, or to the, not the arena, but
Or
the new
the new.
triplex, whatever they
Yep.
call it?
Sanford, is that by Sanford?
Hockey was pretty much invented in Wisconsin, so, you know, that works for me.
I think that would be Canada.
Justin,
No, seriously, it's Wisconsin.
Justin, I'm not sure who designed the ice facility in Sioux Falls, but did not Gil Haugen build that?
Gil Haugen was the contractor.
And do they also have architects on their firm, do they not?
They do not.
Okay. But it wasn't Banner or anything like that, I don't believe.
Banner,
it Banner?
was the architect for that
Okay.
project. Yes.
Justin, I have just one more question
Yes.
for you too. Of that $8 million, what is the contingency portion of that estimate?
Again, that I don't know. That's something that can be worked out.
That will be actually
Yeah.
worked out when the CMAR is hired, and
Yeah.
Mike, you know
Yeah.
how that works. This is only architect. We're looking at dollars. Nothing, of course, is finalized on anything until we actually are sitting down and understand what the costs are.
Right.
Typically, there's two contingencies, correct? One from the construction side and one from the owner side, right?
That is
And usually the
correct.
owner
Yes.
side is a percentage of the project, which is normally what?
For,
First-
it varies. It can depend on what's set up.
And you have to understand, Justin is not the guy. I know that Gary had another appointment that he had to be at this evening.
Yeah,
that
he
had
actually-
set up a long time ago.
He was actually down in Parkston today with the volunteer fire department, setting up a new project for them. So, which we've been working on for quite a while.
Mayor, can I ask one question? And it's really not about this contract as much as it is about what I looked at today for plans. It seemed like at one point I had heard as much as 3,000 seats, I think, at some point. Has
You
that
did.
now changed
Oh,
to
yeah.
where we're back to 1,800 kind of thing?
Right, because we had some people that came on board late in the game, said, no, we have to have 3,000 seats, we have to have a junior hockey league here, and or is it junior pro, whatever that was. And they wanted it at 3,000. The building actually spiked up to three rinks. Yeah, we had to bring it back down into reality. So there is not 3,000 seats in there. At one time, even the seating had reclining seats, and yeah, it got pretty fancy.
So all right, it's a stupid question, but I'm asking anyway. As it currently sits, because we know how this has went around, is what the number of seats is, that's the correct number, right? Because we've been through this 100 times with the community center. does the current design suffice and give us room to grow to host the state hockey tournaments here that exist? I mean, would we be in that running? Are we at that level of a facility that we could
And
host
that
them?
is kind of a stupid question. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. 'Cause yeah, actually, what this would do with 1,850 seats, the state hockey, if I'm not mistaken, you have to have 1,500 seats. We thought if we didn't go to this particular range, at some point in time, the larger cities are going to have more seats than us, and they're going to change that number on us, and they'll move it to 1,600 seats or 1,700 seats or 1,800 seats. So we went to 1,850 that we could use this thing for. So we're actually a couple hundred seats bigger than what a state meet takes. So
Yep.
that's kind of why we made sure we had those extra seats in there.
Yeah, I know that's been a conversation with the committee early on, so.
Bob, you're back there. You want to come up and say anything? Tom?
Tom Lennox. I moved here about a year ago, and my background is I've got 20-plus years of coaching and scouting, as well as arena management. So I'm kind of looking at this, and I know that there's been some questions in regard to past experience in regard to building a facility like this. And a couple things that and again, I know you have early plans, there's things that change. But a couple things I look at is I think your cost estimates are low. And that's having come from St. Olaf College, where we were looking at putting a rink on campus, having managed and assistant managed rinks in the United States. I think also you're looking at, you get those surprise costs, you get extra monies that all of a sudden, it's like the guy that spells Chiefs wrong in the end zone. You have situations.
And there's only one KC fan in here that I can point out. I'm just saying, did you do that?
Hey, I'm representing the red right now. but-
Okay.
But looking at the fact that, you are trying to get an outside consultant in, I would suggest for the city to protect itself and try and manage costs, because, again, I've only lived here about a year, but having interacted a little bit with Mr. Danforth on the construction that was done on 19th, and some of those things, Mike would agree that, we don't always get to see the whole picture. I would suggest that the city on their own hire an outside consultant. There's a couple of different ones. There's a Mike Brooks out of the Twin Cities that actually I worked for at one time, who ran the only ice arena management school in the United States. So when you look at trying to build it, and you're looking at it from a construction standpoint, but he's going to look at it from a management side of it, in that if you really want to maintain a facility that you're going to basically make probably your most expensive building in town, if I'm not mistaken, having looked at the costs of some of the police department and stuff like that, if you're looking at 10 to 12 million minus the rec center, it's a big investment. And having that experience and somebody that would consult you guys and look from your perspective and protect the city's interest and the taxpayers, I think it would be beneficial.
Point well taken. Thank you. And that can be done. So I guess what I'm looking for tonight, guys, is do we move forward with this? Do we hold off? Do you want me to go out and hire another architect to try to design again? What do you guys want to do? I'd like to see us be able to start moving on the ice at a point in time here where, I would like to get a CMAR on, so we have a guaranteed maximum price, so that we know we aren't going to go above and beyond that. I will tell you that Dustin from the Gray Construction has been involved in this from the very, very beginning, as they would be as a CMAR. This would not be as a design bid build project. So I'm looking for some guidance on this. I think that we have a great site selected. We understand it'll be over by the Ball Diamonds. It would be nice if we could get through some design period and get this done and either start late fall or early spring.
It's probably more apt to probably be spring, based on where we're at in the bidding
Probably early
process and
spring,
everything,
so
if
that
I had
we
to
could,
guess.
so that we can get this thing, so they can use it in 17. That's what our goal would be. You don't think so? Take more than a year to build this? I don't agree with you, Tom, but.
Even if you started in the spring to make the skating season, they start so early now that it just wouldn't be, you might come in the middle of the season, maybe, if it did everything right.
But, and like I said early on, there's an additional 350 kids that use this facility besides hockey. So we have to, and we had those people in too. And remember, John, they were in there. We had numerous discussions with them of what they were looking for on ice, because there's two different needs here. There's the public, well, three different needs. The actual public for just open skating, we have the hockey, and then we have the figure skaters. And so it's a big deal.
Mayor, it seems to me like with Stevens being the right-hand man here for Justin, that this firm can do the job, and so I would make a motion to sign the contract with RS Architects.
What we could also do, before we go on a second, is maybe we should contact Stevens as more of a consultant also in the very beginning, rather than just the engineer, because they do consulting on these things.
Yeah, I think that would be our goal, is to get them involved.
You guys would hire them as a consultant engineer?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that, so that they're
Yep.
not just coming in and, because if there's changes that need to be made, we need to make them.
No, they'll be a part of the design process moving
Okay.
forward.
All right, so I do have a motion by
I'd
Dan. If
second that.
Who? Randy seconded that. Other discussion? I'm going to ask the council for,
Mike's got
I asked, other discussion?
Well, have we talked to anybody that has done one of these before? I mean, from an architectural standpoint.
The three I've interviewed and the group has interviewed and worked with, none of the three from South Dakota have literally designed a building for ice.
Okay. If we're going to confer with Stevens, maybe that should be our first step to get their input on the importance of this.
I think what I'd like to do, Justin, is if they do approve this contract tonight, I think we should take a ride over to Wisconsin and talk to these people, or have them come here, one of the two, so we understand exactly what they do.
Certainly arrange
You know,
that.
I think that would be important. I know that during the community center building, we didn't really visit with the pool people until they were there. So are we okay with that?
Well, Mayor, here's what I'm wondering is are we going to talk to Stevens about consulting on this project?
That's
That's what
exactly
I understood.
what I want to
Okay.
do.
But that would be outside of whoever the architect is, correct?
Right, because you're going to look at them as a consulting service. No, I think what you're saying is that they would be a consultant for us and a consultant for RS. I don't know why you'd want to double up and pay twice. I think if the architect and our firm, or the city, works together on consulting, would that not be suffice?
Well, they can't have two bosses. They have to be working for one body or the other, right?
I would agree.
And if they work for us, that's It's kind of like our owner's rep that we had
Right.
with Tegra. They work specifically for us and not for the architect or any of the engineering firms. Now, they may eventually work for them. But my question was this, is it possible, I don't know how important it is that this decision be made tonight versus our next council meeting? Because to me, it'd be interesting to be on the phone with Stevens, who's obviously done a lot of this, what they make their living at, find out from them what they feel is important from the needs of an architect. How important is it historically?
I agree. I think that's a
From
good
their
idea.
perspective, that you get somebody that knows, that has gotten a history in building facilities for ICE. And Don, I think that's where you're probably going. I personally, I think it can work. It's the team you assemble is so critical to these things. And if there is that concern, and if we're going to go and consider Stevens as the consultant, why don't we take a pause on this decision for till the next meeting and have the conversation outside of RSA and say, okay, here we are, get their input. We're not hiring them at this, but we're saying, tell us what your input is. What have you seen work? And maybe we get that input back. They may come back and say, it's not a problem as long as you got
Let me do this.
good, somebody structurally that's well, and you got somebody that's got the HVAC under control.
How about this? How about you, Bruce, myself, John is included. I say you go along with the agreement to sign this, but we'll have that conversation with them first before it actually is signed. We can talk to them later this week and get an appointment and find out those questions
I think it moves
So
the
this is
whole.
this is a contingent,
upon the
Approval.
acceptance. Yeah,
I would be good with that.
yeah. I think it's a continued approval without the actual signature until we talk to Stevens and say, okay, are you comfortable with a design like this with an architect that has not designed ICE before? Fair enough?
As long as it's a continued approval, I
So
think
does
that's
that
one
work?
step that's important.
Right,
I-
but I also think that by doing it this way, we're not slowing down the process significantly. I think we're
No,
moving.
not at all. And I'm open with that. I think we can do that. Don, you okay with that?
I think we're getting the cart before the horse. I don't think 2 weeks makes a difference. I think we want to check with Stevens, get some feedback. I don't think 2 weeks makes a difference, so.
So I think we're okay with that.
Don, are
So
you,
my point is, I would vote no on that.
Okay. And then I think what I will do then is I'm going to look for a vote anyhow, so.
Well, Steve, before we go any further, I just want to ask, if it's a contingency and we're not going to know for 2 more weeks, why don't we just vote on it in 2 weeks?
we may know tomorrow. I mean, if we call
Yeah.
tomorrow, they may say it's not a problem. So why would you wait 2 weeks?
But that would allow us to sign it and get it on, get it moving, and then we can get the CMAR, get the bids out for that to let these guys understand where we're at.
Guys, we kind of had this same discussion with the pool people.
We did.
Way back when we were picking an architect. It was kind of like, odd, this is a different animal from the community center. The community center was much more multifaceted than what this is. A lot of different elements to that. This really, its purpose in this building is one thing, and it's ICE and ICE management and everything that goes with that, and then the bodies. So to me, I think it's an easier blend of maybe not having as much experience than it would be if that other facility, in my mind. But I will tell you that the one thing that we did do was exactly what I'm suggesting we do with Stevens, is we had phone calls then outside of the discussions with the architects with the pool people and said, okay, where are we at? What do we need to do? And that's where we ended up settling on that company for our choice of contractors
Did we
and
not
going with
have
JLG.
those- Didn't we not have those conversations with the CMAR, with the pool people? Though? It was kind of, because they were on board at that time, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
But I think we should.
This was in
Let's do
the
it.
architect selection process, Steve, way back when.
So I think let's do that, and I think it's contingent upon those folks saying that it really doesn't take an expert in design of the building when they can do their stuff. So let's do that. So I'm going to look for a vote at this time.
You need,
Hold on,
you
no.
need to change the motion, though?
Change the motion then?
No, I don't think so. I think the motion is, we can have that motion to approve with contingent upon the
That's my
consulting
point.
of.
That
Okay.
wasn't the motion, though.
It shouldn't really change it, but do you want it changed, Shell?
I think we should change it.
Okay, I'll do that with the contingency to check with Stevens.
Okay.
And I'll second
You
it.
second, Randy second it. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed, motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move on. Thanks, Justin, and all you ice people. Here it is, July, we're talking ice. It's all good. Okay, let's move on. Number 8, consideration of change order number 1 to the contract with Bates Construction Company Incorporated on the Amdahl Wetland Complex project, increasing the contract amount $4,690. So Roger, fill us up to date on this thing.
I feel pretty insignificant compared to the last discussion. The,
No, because we're going to hit you with some other things. Don't worry about it. Thanks, Bob.
The contract has gone very well. The job is nearly complete, just doing the final paperwork now. The reason for the change order is that the structures that we built to retain and slow down the water to make these wetlands, it was designed with Class C riprap, which is the big jagged granite stones. We put them in a pasture setting, and the landowner's concern is if an idiot cow runs through it, is it going to break a leg? I know, third world problems.
Is that the same cow that says eat chicken?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one. Anyway, what we've done is we've brought in some extra rock, filled in the voids, put gravel on a couple of the little check dams so that they can walk across without injuring themselves for the $4,000 and change. That's pretty much all
Okay,
there
so
is to
I
it.
think what I'll do, Roger, is I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. I got a motion by Bruce, second by Don. Any questions you have for Roger?
Can you fill me in on exactly what this project was again, as far as where it was and such?
This project is in Grant County, right on the border of Laura Township, I believe. It's a constructed wetland project that's in one of the drainage systems that dumps directly into the Big Sioux River. Its purpose is to retain a small amount of water to create wetlands so that as the drainage comes off the neighboring farm fields, about 3 sections worth, there's a couple of animal nutrient systems in the area, typical farming exercises. As that water comes in, it has a chance to slow down, drop the solids out, and the wetland plants utilize those nutrients before it gets to the Big Sioux River. It'll be on our next tour stop next time we go up there.
Any other questions? Anything you want to add to it?
Would this be final, Roger?
Yes.
Yep.
At this time, I'll look for council action. Excuse me. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I do want to talk, and Sarah, could you come up also? I want to talk with Sarah and Roger about the weirs on Lake Compesca. In particular, I'd like to, and can you bring that up on the screen? Perfect. In particular, I'd like to talk about the breach of the weir over there by Lakeshore. And please explain. I think people don't really understand that we have the weir, which is on the river itself, and then there's the weir over there by Lakeshore, which was put in a number of years ago. And the one at Lakeshore has a fish trap, I believe, and which is open all the time, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at that picture, and if you can bring it in a little tighter on that existing weir that has been breached, I want to kind of touch base on that.
Sure. I just wanted to show an overview approaching the lake on Highway 20 and the Lakeshore Lunker's restaurant is right here. This is a water quality weir that was put in about 15 years ago. And on the river itself is another weir that was put in about in 1940-ish, which controls the ordinary high water level of Lake Compesca. That weir is set, the top of the weir is the ordinary high water level. And so water comes down the river and trickles over the top of it. that was the low spot when it was constructed. But it has been breached, water gets around it, and water, that's happened throughout our history on several different occasions. Most recently, it was repaired about 2004, sometime in there, shortly after, while it was done in conjunction with the construction of the water quality weir, which is set about 1/2 foot higher. And it has a fish notch, not a fish trap, but fish can come and go as they please. But the water quality weir is a little bit higher, and water can get out. This weir is supposed to trap water so that the minimum elevation in the river is the lake full level, the ordinary high water level,
Right.
excuse me.
But, and I also want to touch on the, to the right of the weir that's currently there. That's where the actual breach took place. So I believe HDR did a study back in 2009, five, and they came up with a certain dollar amount. And what HDR said is that we need to protect our lake with that weir there, whether it be there, close them both up, or bring it further down the river. Am I correct?
Well, they looked at 2 locations, and I drew them in red here. They didn't go further down. These were more or less the same solution, just looking for a high spot to tie into. And the survey data is from 2004.
But wouldn't that still cause an issue if you went with one of those 2 in red? You'd still have to build and fix the weir that's in between on the river, would you not? I mean, otherwise it's not going to do anything. You'd have to fix
The
that.
weir is in good condition.
I thought that was breached. I
Well-
thought that weir was a wooden structure and it's like in dire need.
There's
No.
there's an older one out there yet.
This,
Okay.
yeah, that's.
But in the future.
Is that one good?
In the
This is
future,
the
what you're
old-
saying, there will be 2 to repair as opposed to 1.
I think so.
Not
That one's
necessarily
okay.
tomorrow, but 10, 15 years down the
Sarah,
road,
that one
there.
that you have your pool cue going on is okay?
This?
Yeah, go down a little bit, right
This
there.
one's fine.
That's good. So
I
you're just
haven't
talking a little
inspected
bitty one up there on that, to the right.
So where it's been breached is from natural
Right. And
erosion or whatever.
rivers meander, and you can look and see the footprint of where the Big Sioux River has been in the past. And that typically, rivers change course during high flow periods. And since this original survey and design was done in 2005, we have had 2 high flow years. We had flood years in 2010 and 2011, and we don't know what shape the channel's in. We can see that breach is dramatic. And if you look back at earlier photos, you can see it, but it's not nearly as pronounced. And so as water flows through it, it erodes the channel. That's natural. That's a normal thing that a river does. And so we can patch it. And chances are pretty darn good that it will find another place to breach. And you kind of have to stay on top of it all the time.
So
But
let me ask you this question. If we were to build this weir in one of those 2 spots, and the things being as they are today, and if those weirs were in there, would the lake today be at 30 inches below full?
probably not, but that's speculation because
Well,
we
I
haven't
understand
had
that, but-
precipitation and we've had a lot of, I mean, the hot weather and windy weather causes the water table to
Yeah.
drop.
Now, my question is, today I got a note from Jeff, and it said that the weirs will be open and until the lake comes to 24 inches. What's going to bring that lake up 6 inches because you open the weirs?
That would be the gates that are in the, well,
In the Corps built?
correct, the one by,
Okay, that's
one
what
by
I was-
Lunkers.
That's what I was just curious about, because in the last month or 2 months or 6 months or 12 months, we've been seeing water flow out. Am I correct? Until now, when it hits 30, it doesn't flow out. It's lower than the weir.
water will flow out of the lake when the river is lower. If water's flowing out of the fish notch and you open the gates on the weir, water will flow out until the water in the lake is the same as the
Well, yeah,
water level in the
I
river.
get it, but I just got this email. He said we're gonna open them up until it's 24 inches rather than 30 inch. Is he expecting that the river is higher than the lake now?
No, that's the protocol that they came up with when they built the
So
water
is the water
quality.
gonna continue, if we open those gates, is water gonna go out of the lake?
Slowly, yes. And it
And
will,
if
it
we
will do
left
that.
If we left, yeah, but if we left it as it is, just through your fish trap,
That's a basic
Trap
misconception.
trap gate, I'm sorry.
Right.
The water is currently probably not flowing out of there because it's at 30 inches,
Actually, it is.
really.
Because the lake sets in aquifer material, the groundwater connection is intimate. As the aquifer fluctuates up and down, so does the level of the lake.
So what's
the
what's
gate
gonna, if we open those gates, what's it gonna do to help us?
The purpose of that is to allow the lake to recharge from the water that comes down the river.
In a rain event.
In a rain event.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Or
if we have no
runoff.
rain.
We don't.
It
we
doesn't
don't-
make sense to me right now.
We don't necessarily want that poor water to come into the lake, but that's the way the agreements were written when the weir was constructed. Yeah.
It seems ridiculous if we're gonna open those gates and allow more water to go out of out of the lake. Maybe I'm wrong. Guys, help me out. Am I wrong in my thinking
Okay,
here?
okay, so the basic premise is the breach that's happening around that old weir is allowing the river and the lake to uniformly go below the established elevation that they wanted to impose on it by having the weir there. So, in other words, it's kind of like when you build a moat as a child along the lake shore, and you build your wall and you dig a hole that keeps water in it. And then a wave comes along and it knocks down part of your wall and all your water runs out of it. That's kind of what's going on around this weir right now. So if we fix this breach, presumably when it rains, the water that runs down from the upper reaches of the river will eventually raise everything up. Without this breach fixed, the water will continue to flow down past Watertown, past the lake.
No, I think I understand that.
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
that's a
that-
given. That's pretty
right.
simple,
But-
that if we close that up, then it's gonna continue to fill
Right.
the river and go into the lake.
Right.
My
So-
question is, why are we opening gates today?
And the idea is that every drop of water that comes down from rain will be used to recharge the level of the lake. We won't be artificially passing it downstream, which is what the
Yeah.
inlet
So I guess
weir
where I'm
does.
at, you guys, I wanted you to understand that there's a breach that's been there for quite some time. HDR did the study. It could be anywhere from $125,000 up to $400,000. I think they need to look at this again. I think HDR will come back and they'll update theirs and give us a price. But I really think in this low year that we should fix that breach so that it performs the way that we want it to for Lake Compesca.
Can I ask a couple questions on this? If there wasn't a breach there, and you're saying that the weir that exists there now is adequate and is performing as it should. So assuming that the lake, assuming that we don't have water that's going over the top of that weir, if I'm standing down somewhere below this somewhere, I'm not going to see any water flow then, correct?
Right,
Zero.
right.
Until such point it hits the level of the what'd you call it, the high water mark or whatever it is?
The ordinary high water.
Ordinary
level.
high water mark, and then it would go over, and then we'd start to see water flow,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
So right now, what's happening is, I do see some water, albeit a trickle, coming down, and so we're either via the lake or the river, we're losing something today.
Yeah, it's coming around.
Okay? So here's a question I got. Do we have to fix this with a weir, or can we fix it with a big plug, like a bunch of rocks?
Well,
Why do we have to control this when we already got a weir that we can control?
yeah, we're not-
Rocks seem like a
no,
heck of a lot
we-
cheaper than $100,000.
building a new weir would require new permits. we probably would have trouble getting a new weir constructed. We're allowed to maintain the weir by plugging the holes or the breaches. The breaches are just holes where water escapes around the weir. We're not building another weir per se. What we're talking about doing is a
dam.
plug.
Yeah.
But we have to do that at the level of the top of the weir everywhere. Because if you don't do it everywhere, it's going to find the low spot and go around. That has to be the low spot. So you tie in till you get higher ground so that the weir is once again the low spot.
What would you vision this plug to be made of?
Well, the design that HDR recommended is a clay core which is a mound of dirt plugged all along, fabric put over the top of it, and rock put on top of the fabric. And the fabric keeps the plug in place, and the rock protects the fabric.
So similar to what we did building our little dikes in town, somewhat.
Yes, although we didn't put
didn't rock.
riprap all around
Right,
them.
right.
Right.
Sarah, and that can be done this summer yet? I mean, relatively
I
short.
think so. We need permits to do this, but it is maintenance. If we're just plugging the hole that allows water to escape around the existing weir, that is considered maintenance. We're not building a new weir. We're repairing the breach around an existing weir, and that we can get speedy permits on.
How wide is that breach?
Well, this picture is from 2014, and I'm assuming that it's larger now than it was then, but
So Sarah, you're
25
saying,
feet.
you're saying then that if we do this, if we do put this dam, or you want to call it a plug, whatever, but is it basically that red line would be
Yes.
the distance of that red line, so it gets to the high level
Right.
away from the breach up to the level of the weir itself?
It plugs.
Above the weir
It
itself.
plugs the actual breach, but also any other spot nearby,
Right.
so that this has to be the low point, or water will go elsewhere.
Right.
I don't think we have any choice but to get that done. But I want to back up to the discussion on the gate by Lunker just a minute. I mean, that decision to open those gates is really out of our control.
Right.
Is that correct?
We do not have any say in that. There are certain operating conditions which the State Water Board has prescribed, and when the lake level drops to a certain level, which it's
30
very close,
30 inches, it hit it today.
it hit today, we need to open the gates. We don't have an option.
So
And
my,
then,
so my suggestion to the council tonight is that we actually go in there and actually build that dam, I guess is what you'd call it, and get that done in a low water year like we've got. And I've talked to Shelley about this. One of the reasons why we've used contingency funds and why we have them there, I really think that this is something we should do for the lake and to protect this lake body.
I have a couple questions. First of all, Mayor, I don't disagree, but can we get a better plan and estimate than what we have discussed today?
I
and
would
to be
not,
met-
yeah, I wouldn't say we would move forward with the plan from 2005.
Right.
Okay.
No, we have to
All
get
right, so I
that.
mean, so that we're going through, what you're asking us today is at least to go forward with the idea of it with more detail and numbers to come.
Now, I'm asking you to allow engineering to go visit with HDR again, make sure this is the correct plan to go and what the estimated cost would be.
Okay, and come back with it.
If we do it, at some point in time, we need to get it approved by the council and where we would use the dollars from.
This would have to go out for bid then, Mayor, is
Yeah,
that correct?
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Karen, I got,
Sarah.
Sarah, Karen, that's your middle name, isn't it?
Sarah Karen?
Okay, Sarah, I know we've hit that point, and is that point absolute, or can a request go back to request for a lower lake level and keep the gates closed until I mean, is it an absolute, there's just no discussion? I understand that that's the point that was established, but can we go back and say, okay, I know this is where it's at in the agreement, can we do this? Because I really don't understand what good it does any of this to open those gates up. And Mayor, I shared that with you
Well,
2 weeks ago.
I think so,
It makes
yeah.
no sense to me.
But I think what you need to ask also during this period, if you can ask about those gates, is that there was not a breach at the time when they put that in. And now with the breach, it's just, we're just losing it downstream.
Can we challenge the water board in any way in that regard?
You were a wrestler, weren't you?
I'm not scared of the water board. I get water boarded.
I think it's possible to challenge the water board and to get clarification. And actually, I'm not positive it says we must. I know it says we may. And it is possible that I know that we can't open it.
Well, if that's the
If
case,
it
I think,
hasn't dropped
Justin,
to that level, we're not allowed
I
to.
think you need to look at that, at the wording. If that's the case where it's a must or a may, well.
I think
there's
it's
a
the
big difference.
desire of our city that we do not open
Absolutely.
them at this point in time. It serves no purpose other than, even if we lose 2 inches on that lake, it's 2 inches right now we can't afford to lose.
Right, and we can certainly verify that. That shouldn't take
Shane,
long at all.
I think you need to talk to Jeff tomorrow and tell him that we're going to try to take action of not opening those gates. Okay? Can't hear
Roger,
you.
what if we did open those gates, we lose that 2 inches? Say we had an inch of rain, how much would that raise the lake? Just hypothetically.
Over the last couple of rainfalls that we've had, inch and a half, the lake bumped up a half an inch and dropped again.
And what would that have done if we would have had the gates open? Anything more?
I really don't think that it's going to make a whole lot of difference whether the gates are open or not as to where the level of the lake is going to end up being. Because of the dry year, because of the drought situation that we're in, because of the sands and gravels that line the entire lake, everyone talks about springs. Well, they work the other way too.
Right.
When the lake is higher, it pushes water down in. And between evaporation and the water balancing out into the aquifer, it's going to go down no matter what.
Yeah, I
It
know
makes a
there's-
difference too, doesn't it, Roger, on location of where the rainfall
Yes.
is in regards to the aquifer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we do repair the downstream weir, that will help control the water levels that are in the lake, and they'll go down more slowly. We'll be able to
It is
retain them longer.
possible that we would open the gates now, and the condition to close the gates would not have been reached until the spring first flush, which means we would get the entire first flush into the lake. And that's what you're concerned about.
That's what
Exactly.
we're
And that's
hoping.
entirely possible.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we do that. I think you check with the must and the may ayes, and Sarah, you go ahead and work with HDR and get this moving along. And if we need to update our permits or whatever we got to do, let's do it. Let's get this done.
Mayor, isn't that, or Karen, I know that.
Mrs. Kennedy.
This is to open or close those gates is what? Is that like a 10-minute deal? Is it a 2-day deal? What is it?
It's not a 2-day deal, but
Okay.
To physically turn the crank, yeah, it's a couple minutes.
Okay, but so typically speaking, anything coming down that river, we're gonna know ahead of time something's coming down the river, aren't
we
we?
can't close it though until.
No, but I'm talking about in the
Yes.
management of what's coming down that river. It's not like it's gonna be a surprise to us as it relates to, gee, let's open or close them.
Right, we watch the river very closely in the
Right.
spring.
So it's, even if we get a big rain coming, we're gonna have some idea that
Right.
something's coming, correct?
Typically, that first flush comes when there's still frozen ground conditions. We may have ice, which would prevent the full closure of the gate. I mean, we could put it down as far as the ice would allow it, and that would help. But, I mean, trying to operate these gates when the ice isn't out yet, which is generally when we have our first flush, could be problematic.
Okay.
Now, this is a utility issue, is it not? Aren't they the ones that handle it
Municipal
for us?
Utilities operates the gate,
Yes. They're the gatekeepers.
yes.
Okay, I get it. All right, I think, so I think we all have our directions. Let's see what we can do and move forward with this. I think it's important that, it is a drought year. Let's get this fixed. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. You guys all good with that?
Yes.
Good down there? Okay. Thank you very much. Tim, I'd like you to come on up here a second, if you would. I just wanted to visit with you a minute, Tim, and maybe the group has something they want to mention, but troubling times out there, and I just want the public to be aware that, there are those concerns of things like that happening even in a small community like ours. And when they get pulled over, you guys might be a little more apprehensive, a little more nervous than in the past of what you're dealing with. And if people can just be a little bit, understanding that you guys got a lot of apprehension out there, what's going on. And just tell me, what are you seeing out there in Watertown, and how do you handle it?
Well, first of all, I mean, we're deeply saddened by the events that have taken place, and I think it highlights the danger of our job. And I want to just thank the community. We've had such an outpouring of support from the community. I mean, so many treats and thank yous, and I mean, one of our core values is selfless service. So we don't do our job for accolades or credit, and so we really don't know how to deal with those. So I do want to thank you guys, the council and the mayor, for your support, as well as the community. It's been incredible. Watertown isn't immune to any of these acts. I mean, we're fortunate. We have a safe community, but we're not immune to it. Just over the weekend, for instance, I mean, several domestic violence calls, a gentleman throwing 2 grams of methamphetamine in a sewer and taking off running. Any one of those incidents could turn bad in a quick hurry. So, we train really hard to practice officer safety, and we do have maybe there's an increased hypervigilance, but we're always training for officer safety. And, I think the tragedies, although they are a tragedy, it just reaffirms our commitment to the community, and we'll still run towards that danger to serve this community, so.
It is a tough job, and you come up to a car and you pull over for just something, speeding or something like that. Some of your training, I see when you come up to a window, you don't just walk over to the window and say, "Hey, buddy, you were speeding." I mean, you have protocol, you have things that you do. You check the hood or the trunk first and see if it's see if something's weird going on there. So people just need to understand how you do your job and why you do your job the way you do, and we do appreciate it. It's a tough job.
Well, thank you. I think every one of our officers put the badge on knowing that, at any day it could be their last call of duty. So, but we do it for service to the community, really. So I appreciate that.
Tim, have we gotten to the point of riding double in cars now, or is it, I noticed during the day that's not been the case, but is that something that should be thought about, is at nights here,
We do a really good job of backing each other up. We're always listening to the radio. Being in such a small community, it's just a matter of minutes away from each other. So if we typically are back, if one of our officers does a traffic stop, you're going to see 2 or 3 cars drive by. And that's why. I mean, that's to make sure that our officers are safe. And it's not because we don't have anything better to do. It's just that we're trying to keep each other safe.
If anybody ever has the thought of going on a ride-along, I did that. What Tim just said is kind of amazing how when you watch the computer in the car, everybody knows where everybody's at. And a lot of it's just driving by to make that presence, knowing that, there is another officer in the area, so.
Yeah, and we don't roll our sidewalks up at night. There's stuff going on in our own community that, maybe the general public aren't aware of. But that means we do a good job. But
Mayor, I asked you the question last week. Give us an update. Where are we at as far as body cameras with our police department?
Yeah, actually, I believe the body cameras are in the 2017 request, and we are leaving those in for the police department. I think any more this day and age, it's got to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I just wanted to let you know that I did secure the room. There's no Pokemon running around the room, so you guys are safe. So.
Your press release made it all over the Midwest. I don't know if you know.
We reached over 200,000 people with it.
Yes.
One press release.
Yeah, and it was reported on all different news stations all throughout the Midwest, and everybody thought it was great. So.
Well, thanks, Tim. We do appreciate everything you guys do, and if you get extra cookies, you know where the mayor and finance office are.
Absolutely.
Just saying that, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Any new business that you folks need to talk about? I'm sorry, any old business first, if you need to discuss anything.
I've got a question. Where are we at? There was an accident down at the
20th Avenue and 81 intersection of the weekend. Where are we at as far as slowing traffic down, or what's the timetable in the roundabout down there? Can you give us a brief update on that, Steve?
Yeah, we weren't very successful, were we, Don, at slowing the traffic down? If you want to touch on that as a DOT. put a
Traffic
different hat on.
studies don't indicate any changes at this point. I think we'll continue to remind them, and I think as Broadway closes, we're going to have maybe a little bit of a different story to tell. Unfortunately, this adds to the story, but I just think we're just going to have to keep that ball in the air.
Yeah, and then the roundabout, of course, will be coming in a couple of years. This next year, I think you're moving the water and storm sewers and things like that.
The city
Down in
has,
that corner.
yeah, the city will need to relocate some sanitary sewer mains in advance of the roundabout project, which is scheduled for 2018. And actually, we've actually, now, if I can get the design done, have an alternate path to do that work under the construction project. So I'm trying to get the engineering designed in time to include it during the same year instead of in advance. But right now, we're trying to get to that goal.
So I want to clarify, it is still 2018, because I heard
Yep.
2017 sometime
That
in
was-
the recent past.
Yep, and that was some of our work that we were trying to do in advance, but now we're trying to tie that directly to their project. And that is in, they'll take bids in 2017 and construct it in 18.
Right. Any other questions? Any other old business?
How about construction update on 81?
Go ahead, Shane.
Primarily, they're concentrating on the paving efforts between 6th Avenue and 10th right now. The tentative schedule is to try to, by the end of the month of July, have that completed up to 10th Avenue, and they could still be on pace with that. However, recent rain showers could impact that schedule, but the idea is that they would be able to eliminate the detour once they reach the 10th Avenue going north. And then they're also working on the intersection of 14th and 18th and some of that stuff to the north that'll expedite the project on the back end. So you're starting to see work pretty much along the remaining corridor of the project in different phases, but we're really anxious to get to that 10th Avenue hurdle so that we can eliminate the detour and get more traffic. Yep, so.
Just on a side note on that, I was at, up in that area last week, and one of the emergency response crews was coming from west to east on 14th towards Highway 81, needed to go north. And the way that was set up, they couldn't get there. They got blocked in that intersection. They couldn't, their equipment, they couldn't get it turned there.
Okay, that will be a discussion point for me to have with the DOT then.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to touch base on, this is the ball fields out there, the 5 complex that we're putting up. I was out there today, and they're getting most of all the concrete poured on where the sunshades and all that, and you know, the batting cages, that's all getting done. But what you're seeing in the different color, we added another ring on there, one closer to the concession stands. Those will be all ringed in red as you're coming into the complex. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on what's going on. We have just very, very little to do on the outsides. I thought they had it all seeded. There's only 2 fields that are seeded. The other 3 should be done by the end of the week. They're currently watering 3 times a day to make sure that this seed is coming in okay. We're very concerned about if we're going to have 100-degree weather here this next week to plant that. I'd almost like to see if that's the case to wait till after that heat. Just
You
go
lose
ahead and
anything by
plant it.
waiting.
Not lose anything. I think we should wait till after that hot weather, other than 300,000 gallons a day of water. Yeah. Right. So I think maybe that's something that should be discussed with the contractor on that. But I just wanted to show you that is going to be a little bit of different color concrete out there. I think it's a red. We're still waiting for the roof to come in, the color on the roof. It hasn't showed. That will be a, was it a bronze? What color?
Copper.
Copper color.
Mayor,
which will show up.
I just wanted to, we had discussions in our last meeting in regards to the islands in the parking lot. And they were talking about putting certain types of plants and, I got to looking at, if you look around town, one of the concerns was that they want to put trees in there because that was the original plan. They don't want to put trees in there because there just might not be enough surface area there for water for the roots. But if you look, right outside this building, we've got maybe a 6-foot diameter opening for water to get to the roots of some of the trees that we've got out here. So I guess I'd like to see us rethink what we're doing as far as trees go on those islands.
So did they say yes to trees or no to trees?
Well,
They were saying.
they were saying that we probably shouldn't do that because we didn't have
We
enough
should
root.
not.
They said not enough root exposure, but like I say, if you look out here and there's places all over town that have very little root exposure that have beautiful trees. And it's been
There's
pretty
a
dry.
see
difference
trees.
between mature trees and the saplings, needing surface water.
Well, I'm talking like out here, you got
Yeah.
the 6, 8,
I think
6-inch,
I think we
8-inch
should have
trees.
trees in there. I think Brandy is working on that, is she not?
Yeah, she helped us focus on the plantings in there, and I guess I would agree, there's probably, I just happen to have this in front of me, but there's about 4 islands that probably could accommodate trees better than the remainder, but, so there's 4 of them that are decent-sized islands. We could have that discussion at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think they should be. I think it would really dress it up out there and it would look good.
What are the rest of the islands going to be covered with? Center of the part of the islands.
Pardon me?
What are the rest of the islands going to be covered with center islands?
Okay.
Rock?
We weren't going to use rock because, they grab those and they throw them out and.
They were talking about it's a kind of a red rubberized, it's like chunks of rubber that they've used in different locations. It looks pretty good, it stays in there pretty well, I guess. Won't damage windows if you throw it in a car.
My only concern is just about every place we have that, we also got weeds, so.
Right, exactly. So I just wanted to touch base on that for you. That's coming along extremely well. The community center I know we got more things to do yet tonight, but the community center is coming along wonderful. We've been up there 3-4 times in the last couple of weeks. They're laying tile, the pool's coming along great. They're painting right now up there, so if you get a chance, if you can hook up on a tour up there, I would encourage that. It's just really nice, and I know Mike and Bruce have been very involved in the process up there, and it's going very well. Hobby Lobby, I just wanted to mention to you that they got all their curbing done for their parking lot. They will be, it's kind of weird, guys, but they're going to put the parking lot in here hopefully by the end of this week. It should all be done. And then they're going to come in, they have a construction company that'll come in, do the footings. The footings will be made almost like a U shape. They're going to be building the walls. Normally, you remember when they did the gauge walls for the community center, it took like 3 weeks to cure. These cure in 3 days, and they'll build them on site, and then they'll stand them up. And they don't weld them in, like when we were at the community center, they welded those up. These actually, they pour a compound in the footings, stand them up, and it bonds to that. So it's a little different process that they use, but that's coming along really well. They told me today that they expect the building up within 110 days. They should have it completed. I don't know if that meant the insides and everything, but 110 days they should have that done. So I thought I'd just bring you up to date on that. It's kind of fun to watch. Liaison member reports, anything anybody wants to share? I do need to go into executive session. It's on personnel issues, and I do not expect anything. Shelley? Do you expect anything? Don't know. It's kind of a crapshoot, so if you want to hang out, you can. If you don't, hit the road. I will look for a motion in a second for to go into executive session. I got a motion by Bruce, second by Randy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we're back. I will look for a motion and a second to deny the request of sick leave. So moved. Motion by Beth, second by Mike. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, guys, at this time, I'll look for a motion, a second for adjournment. Motion by Glenn, second by Bruce. All in favor, say aye.